Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Lettuce Head Fanfics, back with amazing fanfiction. This is the second part of What If All for One Deku becomes Shadow Hero. Now before starting, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. Third POV. The students of 1A walked out of the bus to find the rescue hero 13, All Might, and Green Tornado. The students were happy to see all of their teachers, but they didn't know what was going to be waiting for them in a handful of minutes. Stella had texted Izuku that they had arrived at the USJ for the rescue training, and Izuku sent back a text message saying that he moved crows in that area to keep a watch out. However, unknown to the students and the heroes, their lives would be drastically alerted moving forward, but first, they had to listen to the rescue hero 13 give his introduction and the important things to do during rescue training. Quirks are dangerous. They can harm people, and humans have always been good at weaponizing the tools we are given to harm others regardless of their ages when they are provided the tools. Sadly, we see this all of the time as other children abuse the power against those that are deemed weaker, or adults taking their frustrations out on those less fortunate or those that they are meant to care for. However, I love teaching how to use the tools we are given to rescue, to help, to save people instead of just fighting. 13 said, and her little speech had several blows aimed at the Yagis, Bakugo, and Todoroki. She's been a fierce opponent at the 3 children being accepted in UA and the 2 adults Yagis being allowed to teach at UA. The 2 adult Yagis known of 13 views, but it didn't make it easier to take the insults each time 13 sees a good chance to do it. Once the speech was over, they all moved into the building and were getting ready to start the training when the lights flickered. They all wondered what was going on until a portal started to open up in the middle of the plaza. One student talked about how cool it was to have fake villains, but Aizawa shouted at them all to get back and that those are real villains. 13. Guard the students with Green Tornado while I and All Might deal with the villains, Aizawa stated as he prepared himself to fight and took a position at the steps with All Might. All Might leaned over and whispered to Aizawa, "Eraserhead, I only have an hour of time. I had to stop and help with a few crimes early today before arriving at UA. We can't draw this out." All Might stated. Eraserhead rolled his eyes and cursed the man next to him. Of course you did. Just can't stop being a hero to others and be where you are needed the most, can you, All Might? Eraserhead stated as he watched the villains pile in. They had a large army of villains and some weird creature. Aizawa saw the strange creature and his thoughts went right back to the case that Hunter had discussed with Nizu. Well shit. It's the League of Villains, Eraserhead stated, and All Might and everyone looked at him confused. Oh? You know of us? The man in the crowd stated as he scratched his head. Indeed. I've heard a bit about you. That creature, it's meant to deal a lot of damage to heroes. I also know you're the one that destroyed our gates today, and I'm assuming you used the guy next to you to teleport out of there after that. I'm also assuming that's how you figured out our trip here, since you used the gate attack as a distraction. Am I wrong? Eraserhead stated, and the man with the hands chuckled out and broke into laughter. You're correct. This is a bioengineered weapon made to end All Might, the man stated, and everyone but Eraserhead thought he was crazy. All Might be dash, Eraserhead started, but All Might already charged the creature and started to exchange blows. Idiot, Eraserhead thought as he jumped down to fight the mob of villains. The other 2 teachers started to make the students leave, but they wanted to stay since they thought they were safe with All Might there, but they were in for a rude awakening when the warp user teleported in front of them all and attempted to warp them all away. Bakugo and Krishimiya attacked the villain like idiots, which caused 13 to halt her attack. This allowed the villain a small time to warp a lot of them away to the different zones of the USJ before Green Tornado used her quirk on him and tossed him away from the students. The warp user tried attacking again, but Ida had escaped under orders from the teachers to warn the school. 13 used her quirk on the villain, but the villain redirected the attack onto 13, which caused her injuries. 13. Green Tornado yelled out as she tried to defend the students. She used her quirk again on the villain, but he just kept warping away even though she would grab the metal brace. Her quirk wasn't the best to stop this villain since he just could warp out of her telekinetic hold. As this struggle was going on, the students were all in their own fields of the USJ. Stella herself was thrown into the water zone with Tsu and Yagi. As they regrouped on the ship, they could hear the sound of fighting going on in the main plaza and could see the shockwaves from All Might and the creature. All Might was an idiot to charge that creature. He didn't want to hear any information from Aizawa-sensei, who knew something about the creature. Stella stated, and Yagi looked like she wanted to defend her father but kept her mouth silent since she had to agree it was kind of stupid to charge off. Tsu, can you grab Yagi and jump to the shore? I can fly myself across, but first I'm going to heat the water to a level that the water villains can't handle. Stella stated, and Tsu nodded her head as she grabbed Yagi and jumped. Stella then formed fire wings that looked like wings of a phoenix and hovered over the water for a bit as she turned the heat up and started to make the temperature of its increase to a point that they all got knocked out unconscious due to the rapid increase of temperature. After looking around, Stella headed to the shore where Yagi and Tsu were both at, and when she arrived she was disturbed by the sight she saw. She saw Eraserhead on the ground bloodied and All Might on a knee with blood running down his face. He was still in his hero form, as Stella would call it, but he was exhausted and he was not winning the fight. Even Green Tornado had come down to help, it seems, and she had a lot of wounds on her, as well as she was near Eraserhead and had pulled him a bit away from the fight while still on guard and dealing with any of the thugs that got up to try and harm them. A lot of the students also have made it back to the plaza, and they were all in shock at the sight before them. No one knew what to do with what they saw before them, as they saw the symbol of peace on a knee in front of the villains. We will finally deal with the so-called symbol of peace," yelled out the man with hands. Suddenly the warp user appeared next to the main villain leader and made a report. "Tamura Shigaraki, a student escaped, but overall we win if we end the symbol of peace off now," stated the warp user. "Kuro Jairi, if you weren't my way out of here, I would end you now," stated the man now known as Shigaraki. "No matter, we indeed have won this. We just finish off the symbol of peace before the heroes arrive to save him. Though before that, how about we destroy his pride? Let's end some of the students," Shigaraki stated as he ordered the Nomu to attack Stella, Yagi, and Azui. "No!" All Might yelled as he tried to get up and defend the students, but he fell over due to a wound that caused him too much pain. They all feared for the worst when a dust cloud was created, but then the Nomu went flying past them all and landed near the villain leader. Everyone was in shock as they saw someone standing in front of the students. "Who the hell are you?" yelled out Shigaraki, but the question was answered by Eraserhead, who stated the name. "Hunter. They belong to the League of Villains. The enemy has shock absorption and a regeneration quirk from what we know of," yelled out Aizawa, and Hunter nodded his head. Hunter then turned to the students behind him, and Stella looked at him. "Go to the steps and take your teachers with you, including All Might. The school has been alerted and will be here soon. Move now," Hunter stated, and Yagi looked ready to protest, but Stella pulled both girls with her to the heroes and started to pull All Might away towards the other teachers. All Might tried to resist, but Stella had none of it as she had Tsu use her tongue to lift All Might and move him away. Tsu just obeyed her, and soon they were all at the other teachers and helping them move a bit away. Flashback 5 minutes ago. Izuku was moving about the city when he had a rush of memories from the crows. The crows were reporter that the Class 1A was in danger and under attack. Izuku looked through the memories that he received and was stunned. A creature like the one from New York was at the... Damn it. All Might didn't even listen to Eraserhead. Damn fool. Izuku thought as he looked for a crow near UA's main building. He knew the student would take too long to get to the school and warn them, so he was going to do it first before going to the USJ, since he was sure they could hold out for a few extra minutes. As such, Izuku ordered a crow to move closer into UA's to get a clear view of the staff room. Izuku was in luck as Nizu was in the staff room with some other staff members. Within a few seconds, he teleported into the room and scared all of the staff into a fighting position. "Why hello, Hundash," Nizu started but was cut off. "Get to the USJ now. It's under attack by the League of Villains and they brought one of the weapons. Send as much help as you can because All Might is not winning," Izuku yelled as he disappeared. Izuku was right, and All Might wasn't winning as Izuku saw Aizawa get attacked by the beast and All Might was thrown away and was now on a knee in front of the beast. It's one thing if the neglectful idiot dies, but it's an entire thing to endanger my Heim. Izuku thought as he used a crow to teleport right in front of Stella and tank a hit from the creature. Flashback and Izuku heard the information from Eraserhead and nodded his head in thanks and told the students and Stella to get All Might and the other teachers and leave. That creature packed a punch. That thing without a doubt can end All Might and could do some damage to me, but it's still weak overall compared to me as long as I don't drop my guard. Izuku thought as he analyzed the situation. Soon all of the students got to the plaza and Izuku looked at each of them. He just prayed none of them decided to get involved in the fight and complicate the matters at hand. So your name is Hunter, right? What are you, some vigilante? Asked Shigaraki, and Izuku shook his head. No, I am a pro-hero out of America that has been hunting your organization for the last trail run you guys did in New York with a creature much similar to this Nomu. My mission brought me here once we tracked the leads down, and I've been hunting you down and recently found clues to your group. Though, I can see why you are having so much luck. You have Kurogyri after all as your transportation, which complicates matters on tracking you down. Izuku stated, and everyone was confused on how Hunter knew the Warp Man's name. Kurogyri raised an eyebrow and felt like he had a connection to the pro-hero in front of him. Who are you? I don't believe we've met. Kurogyri asked, and Izuku chuckled. Of course we haven't met. I was just born shortly around the time you were created. Don't worry, you don't need to be a puppet anymore. Kurogyri, teleport yourself to XXX, and wait for me there. Hunter stated, and Kurogyri surprised even himself as he followed the order. Everyone was in shock and looked to Hunter for answers. Even the villains were in shock. Surprise? Don't be. Kurogyri wasn't ever meant to be on your side. He was meant to have free will, but an accident happened and he was never fully healed and memories restored before his accident. Though, I will take care of ensuring he gets the proper care when I am done here. Izuku stated, and Shigaraki started to rage and ordered the Nomu to end Izuku. Izuku just chuckled as he dodged the attacks and created a sitch out of his shadows and started to cut the Nomu up. The man-villain just laughed as the Nomu just healed from all of the cuts and kept attacking. Izuku though was just waiting for an opening to land critical blows and end the fight. As they kept fighting for a handful of minutes, the thugs all got back up from being knocked out and looked at their leader. Shigaraki screamed in a rage since the Nomu wasn't ending the fight. Doesn't matter. All of you thugs get up and deal with the heroes. Nomu, stop playing around and end Hunter already. Shigaraki yelled out as the thugs all got up and started charging to the students and teachers that were down still. Izuku though created clones of himself out of the shadows from the trees nearby, and they all got in front of the thugs and stopped them from moving forward. Do realize I am the master of shadows? I can do so much with them that my mind is the limit. Izuku stated as Shigaraki only got more pissed with Izuku interfering. Soon though Izuku landed a critical blow and had sliced off both arms as Izuku jumped on the back of the Nomu and drove spikes of shadows into the body, pinning it to the ground as the shadows wrapped around the body parts where Izuku had cut the arms off to stop it from regrowing. It can't regrow if the path is blocked. Izuku stated as he tightened his hold on the beast as it tried to break free. Damn, this is stronger than the one in New York. It's resisting far more than the one back then. Izuku thought as he held on tight with his shadows. How the hell? Shigaraki complained. Heroes always find a way, villain. Good job, Hunter. All Might said as he moved towards Hunter. Izuku felt his stomach drop as he knew All Might was about to do something really stupid, and Izuku was right. Go away, All Might. I don't have time to listen to you right now. Izuku called out, but All Might just waved him off. It's fine. We've won, haven't we? Now we just have to deal with the thugs and main leader, which will be easy to do since their weapon is taken out by your shadows. All Might said as he slapped Izuku on his back in a congratulating manner which broke Izuku's concentration. The shadows broke for only a split second, but it was long enough for the Nomu to regrow its arms and break free. God damn it, All Might. Izuku yelled as he pushed All Might out of the way of the blow and took it head-on, and they all watched as the Nomu grabbed Izuku's head and blasted off towards the fountain and slammed him into the fountain itself, breaking it. Third POV. Everyone was frozen until they heard a laugh. Thank you, All Might. I almost lost there, but now the hero likely died or is greatly injured due to your screw-up. Even I know not to break the concentration of someone holding down a powerful enemy. That's like basic 101 stuff. Shigaraki stated as he was laughing out. Everyone looked at All Might, who had a face of horror on since he likely just got someone ended due to his idiotic actions. Stella on the other hand knew that Izuku was just going to be even more unforgiving towards his family for that move of All Might part. Though she wasn't worried about Izuku dying, she still was going to be pissed with him for getting even the slightest bit injured. Soon the laugher came to a halt as the Nomu was sent flying backward past All Might. This is another reason I don't like you, All Might. You don't learn to not be an idiot. Izuku yelled out and everyone was shocked at what he stated. All Might flinched at the tone that Hunter used, but then it turned to shock when the dust cleared. Several other people gasped out as well as they saw the dust cleared. Oni-chan. Izumi stated in shock, and the entire class and teachers looked at her. Todoroki and Bakugo also were in shock as they fell to their knees next to Yagi. They were in shock at seeing their former childhood friend standing there as a pro-hero somehow. Son. Green Tornado stated, and All Might wanted to move towards Izuku, but Izuku just launched past him and into the Nomu as he made a scythe again and started cutting at the creature again. Though, a few seconds later the doors burst open with all of the teachers standing there with Ida from one. We are here with reinforcements. Ida called out as they all looked down to see Hunter fighting the creature and All Might and the others wounded. Though those that knew of Izuku were in shock to see him, Nizu though snapped out of it. Teachers protect the students and someone help Hunt dash, he was saying, but got cut off by Izuku yelling as he stabbed the creature in the head with his weapon and ripped the entire head off. Having come back from that, Izuku yelled out and the Nomu just fell to the ground and didn't regenerate since Izuku had damaged the brain in his attack when he ripped the head off. No. 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 How dare you? Shigaraki yelled out and Izuku just looked at him. You lose. Izuku stated and the villain screamed in anger, but the next moment something happened. The villain coughed up some sort of sludge and disappeared. Damn it. Another teleportation quirk. How many of those do they have in their hands, for the love of God? Izuku raged out and slammed his scythe into the ground, cracking the ground. Son. Izuku heard and he turned around to find Inko Yagi and Toshinori Yagi. Off will you? Izuku stated as he just walked by them and sent Stella a mental message saying he will see her back in UA soon since he's going to have to face them, but he needed to alert America that he's been found out by them all. Stella nodded her head without others noticing and Izuku walked towards Nizu. Nizu. Izuku said and Nizu looked at him. Izuku, you can still call me uncle all you want. What can I do for you? Nizu asked and Izuku calmed himself for a moment. I'll see you back at UA in a while. I need to take care of some matters and make some reports to my bosses back in America. Also, let me know how Aizawa is when you get a report on him. I'll see you in a while. Izuku stated as he just walked out of the building and Nizu didn't try to stop him. Instead, Nizu stopped the Yagi family and others from going after him. Nizu just gave them a glare which made them back off. Soon, Izuku teleported back to his and Stella's home. He tried to calm himself down, but seeing those people and them calling him son made his anger boil. He was just glad Stella wasn't injured. Izuku decided to just make the calls quickly and be done with it. As such, he made a group call to his father, the president of the American Commission, and the official from the UN. After a few rings Hisashi answered, then the Commission president, and then a bit longer the UN official answered. Update, UA just got attacked but it's over now. I arrived in time to save All Might from getting ended since he was an idiot. Anyway, the League of Villains is without a doubt connected to the Doctor. They had one of the creatures which are now dubbed as the Nomus. This new one was easily able to take All Might on for many reasons, but also because he's an idiot and can't think outside of the box. The Nomu does have a weakness and it's the brain. Destroy them then they stop working. Izuku stated and Hisashi asked if Stella and everyone else was fine. Yeah, they are. I arrived on time. I mean within the split second that the Nomu was about to end Stella and 2 other students, but yes. Just in the nick of time. Also, Commission President, I need you to renounce my Japanese citizenship. the Yagis, and everyone knows that Hunter is Izuku Midoriya aka Izuku Yagi. Sadly, All Might screwed me when he decided to slap me on the back when I was containing the damn Nomu. It broke out in a split second of my concentration breaking, so it landed a blow on my head which broke my mask in half, which allowed them to see my face. Anyway, I won't hide it anymore, so please send the paperwork so they can't touch me with the Japan courts or legal system. Izuku stated, and the commission president said he would have it sent right away, and the UN official asked if Izuku knew if the school received the warning from the Japanese commission, and Izuku said he was doubtful that they did. Izuku was told to read Nizu and whoever he thought needed it into the case so it could move forward faster since the League of Villains was getting bolder. The UN would also send a representative to obtain the Nomu to be secured since the Japanese commission wasn't really trustworthy currently. Sirs, I most likely will work out of UA moving forward, for multiple reasons. First, it will be easier with UA's resources at my hands. Second, to help protect my girlfriend from any retaliation from my previous life individuals since they will be pissed that I will refuse to go back with them. Third, I want to torment All Might and the others. Izuku said with a slightly dark tone, and Hisashi reminded him to not let his anger consume him. You know Stella will keep me in line, father. Also, I plan to reveal the fact that I am All for One's son most likely since they will try to shift the Nomu stuff onto you. This means that All Might will know where to look for you, so just stay in America, okay? Izuku stated, and Hisashi agreed since he didn't want Japan blaming him for this shit. The UN said they would be granting Hisashi immunity in regards to his past since he's been a good boy and has been a contributing member of society. In all honesty, they just didn't want Hisashi going back to his past life because All Might threw a hissy fit and attacked him. As such, they issue a blanket immunity that could only be revoked if he went back to his old ways. As such, none of his past crimes could be held against him, to the shock of both Izuku and Hisashi, but they just laughed because All Might's face would be so enjoyable, but Hisashi was still advised from going to Japan due to All Might being there and having a large influence. This was to avoid an international incident and public argument over the UN having to defend the issue of immunity if he tried to push it. Soon, the call came to an end and Izuku had changed into his normal clothing. Izuku looked at the clock and realized it's been about 40 minutes since the attack. Izuku changed his hair color to white just to F with All Might when he meets Izuku again, and Izuku just sported a grin on his face. Damn, I get dad's sadistic tendencies. Izuku thought as he got into the car and drove towards UA. Imagine white hair and white eyes. As Izuku was driving, he received a text message from Stella telling him that all of the students arrived back at UA and were in the classroom. Stella did warn Izuku that everyone was questioning Yagi about Izuku and they were trying to figure him out. Izuku just chuckled a bit and sent a message back that he was currently headed to UA and that he would be coming with his white hair and eyes, so she better be ready to be involved in the mess of his past family. She just texted back that she would always support him no matter what stood in their way, and if she has to, she will burn them all. Izuku just chuckled at that message and texted back that he loved her and couldn't wait to torment All Might with his father's looks. Anyway, let's start. Nizu stated, and they all nodded their heads. Early today we got attacked, which proved to be a distraction as a group known as the League of Villains used it to get information via a warp user named Kurogiri. They stole information and launched an assault on the USJ where they had a creature capable of beating All Might, as you can see in the video behind me. Nizu stated as he showed the video. Those not involved watched it carefully and were shocked at what they saw and how Izuku dealt with it when All Might couldn't. Soon the meeting pushed on and Izuku asked Nizu a question. Nizu, did the Hero Commission of Japan warn you about the attack? Izuku asked, and they all looked at him in confusion. I take all of your faces as a no. Lovely. It seems the commission held the information about a possible attack back from all of the schools. I will need to report that to my superiors. Izuku stated, and Nizu asked for more details on that. I observed signs of a possible attack a period before the actual attack. I had also gained some information about an actual attack and I assumed that it might be on the schools. As such, I sent the information to my bosses who made sure to inform the Japanese commission, who seemed to not have delivered the information to you all to increase your security and watchful eyes. Izuku stated, and Nizu made a note to look into the fact that they never got a warning. The heroes were not happy with the commission when they learned of that. Soon they moved on to talk about the leaders of the attack and the creature that they used in the attack. Izuku, where is Kurogiri? Aizawa asked, and Izuku just looked at him. I will deal with him privately. He was nothing but a puppet that couldn't disobey orders. I'll have him free of the control soon and he can return to his life. Izuku stated without really answering the question that was asked. Son, he's still a villain. He needs to go through the court system, and if it was deemed that he was truly unable to disobey, then he would be handled with that in mind. All Might stated, and Izuku glared at him. First, don't call me son. 2, I said I will handle it and I will. 3rd, you have no legal means to go after him since he's under my protection. Izuku stated with a glare at All Might, who shut his mouth quickly after Izuku's tone. Nizu was interested in how the villain wasn't under their legal authority and had asked about it. Izuku just took a hero license out and slid it over to Nizu, who picked it up and was shocked. Ooh, you're a special agent hero? Nizu asked as he looked at Izuku, and everyone's eyes widened when they heard that. Izuku nodded his head and took the card back as Nizu slid it back to him. Indeed, as such, Japan has no legal means of going after Kurogiri since it's under the UN's authority, since I am here for this case which he's involved in. As such, you will not pursue the matter regarding him. Izuku stated, and everyone nodded their heads at that. Soon, they talked about the next person who they all deemed as a man-child. They all believed there was a person in the background leading the organization, and Izuku kept silent at that part since they didn't get to his case yet. Now, they were on the Nomu. It has multiple quirks from what was seen in the fight. Regeneration and shock absorption. Many others most likely as well. Aizawa stated, and Nizu nodded his head. All Might then talked about All for One and how he's the only one that can do multiple quirks. I thought I ended him all those years ago, but it seems I was wrong. This is troubling if he's targeting me and UA by default. All Might stated, and everyone was tense. Izuku just shook his head, and Nizu noticed this and called upon him to share his thoughts. First, it's not All for One. I and my bosses already know who is behind it. Izuku said as he pulled the case file out and slid it to Nizu. It's a doctor called Kyudai Garaki who is about 100 or so years old. He has a quirk that gives him a youthful appearance, but his mobility is limited due to his quirk. Izuku stated as Nizu projected the file information on the screen. The League's done one attack before in New York where I ran into it and defeated it. We discovered it had multiple quirks together and multiple human DNAs due to human experiments of the DNA being put together to create these Nomus. It took us a while, but we tracked the DNA back to Japan, which led the search back here, which got me sent and stationed in Japan until this case is over and the doctor is either captured or eliminated. Izuku stated, and the heroes took the information in. All Might though spoke up about there still being a chance All for One could have a hand in it since the doctor is over a century old. The doctor indeed worked for All for One, but All for One cut tie over a decade ago when he quit being a villain. Izuku stated, and everyone turned to him in shock when he said All for One had quit as a villain. All Might wasn't having it and said the man could never stop his evil plans. All Might, I think I would know more than you since I lived with him for several years. He is my father after all. Izuku stated, shocking the room, and Izuku just enjoyed All Might's facial expression. Sir Night Eye and Gran Torino were also pale as well on learning of that fact. How? All Might asked. Ish, that's easy. When a woman and a male, in this case Inko Shimura and Hisashi Midoriya, get together and screw each other, then they create a baby. Out came me, and then Inko here decided to screw you not even months after you attempted to off my father after he gave up a life of crime and he was on the way home with milk that day. Izuku stated, and Inko was in shock, and All Might be in shock at learning that Inko's last name used to be Shimura. Indeed. You screwed your mother-figure daughter. She had Inko several years before her son, who she also gave up for adoption. Anyway, Dad had no idea Inko was a Shimura at the time due to her last name being Aizawa due to the adoption. Izuku stated, and everyone didn't know how to deal with the information that they just learned. The ancient evil had a child with Inko, who then had a child with All Might. Want to know what's best? I have an advanced version of All for One as well. I wasn't quirkless to begin with, but my quirk activated at birth and he took it, so I didn't end myself with it since a baby with that quirk would have been chaotic. But Sadly you attacked him, which meant he couldn't give my quirk back until years later when he found me after I ran away. Izuku stated, shocking everyone about his quirk since he's really only showed one that was related to shadows, but in fact, it was multiple combined. Izuku was just enjoying the facial expressions of everyone in the room. All Might was in shock. He was pissed, he was sad, he was a mix of emotions. Damn, I am enjoying this more than I thought I was. I guess years of neglect and abuse does that to someone. Izuku stated as he rolled his eyes, and that statement just hit them again. Gran Torino spoke up. Izuku, he said, and Izuku looked at him. Grandpa? Or do you not want me calling you that, knowing whose blood runs through my veins? Izuku asked, and Gran Torino got up and walked to Izuku. Izuku was ready to be attacked, and Gran Torino could see that in Izuku's posture. Damn idiots. You caused him to be on guard to his own family? Gran Torino thought. He just reached up and hugged Izuku, which shocked him. First, it's good to see you again, and yes, you can call me Grandpa still. Even if his blood is in your veins. Gran Torino stated, and Izuku nodded his head. Dad is sorry for ending the past users. He's had time to think about a lot of his past since I was born. He regrets nothing on All Might though, since he's learned how he treated me. Dad is still wondering how he fell for Inko, which I've always wondered as well. Izuku stated, and Stella just rolled her eyes at Izuku. Gran Torino didn't know how to feel about All for One, but it seemed he was a better father to Izuku than All Might was, so that was the best he could ask for. I don't know how to feel about that, but I will accept it. You matter more to me. Though, where is he? Gran Torino asked, and All Might looked up at that. Izuku just rolled his eyes at All Might. He's back in America, since that is where he's lived for after the last fight with All Might. He is the wealthiest man and most influential business leader in America. The government does know about him as well, and they gave him a license to use his quirk to keep some criminals in check. He has to report any quirks he takes, but they use him to keep the more bloodthirsty villains tamed down, since he would take their quirks. Izuku stated, and Gran Torino nodded his head. All Might gripped his fists. So he's enjoying life. All Might muttered under his breath. Izuku wanted to just beat the man, but he made a promise not to give in to his anger. I don't know, All Might, you seem to have enjoyed your life when you decided to neglect me for being quirkless, even though you were quirkless as well. Ironic one for all is causing your daughter issues in usage. It would be quite a shame that the past users don't accept her for the shit she did to me now, wouldn't it? Oh wait, they are doing just that. Izuku stated with a smirk, and All Might was confused about the past user's remark, but Izuku didn't give him any more information. Anyway, don't even bother going to America to try and arrest him. The American government wouldn't allow it. Nor could you arrest him if he came to Japan. He does have immunity after all that was granted by the UN. As long as he keeps his nose clean, then all of his shit he pulled as All for One can't be held against him. Izuku stated with a smirk, and All Might was pissed at that and slammed his hands on the table. Inko told him to sit down, and he looked at her, but he gave him a glare and told him to sit down. Izuku was laughing now out loud until he heard a voice from behind him. Iki, I think you enjoyed tormenting him enough for today. Rein it in, or you're sleeping on the couch tonight. Stella said, and Izuku paled quickly and turned around and begged to not sleep on the couch. Come on, Haim. I got years' worth of neglect to make up for. Can I keep going for just a bit longer? He asked her, and she just rolled her eyes. No, and that's final. If you keep pushing it, you're on the couch, and we both know you hate sleeping on it. You can torment him another day, but I think you got to talk more about the actual case instead of tormenting him, no. Stella stated with a smile that Izuku knew that she wasn't taking anything but acceptance to her decision. As you wish, Haim. Just don't kick me to the couch. Izuku stated, and she nodded her head, which made him sigh in relief. He then turned back to everyone who looked at him as if he had grown a new head. What? I'm not stupid enough to get kicked to the couch. I am pleased to be a whipped man. Izuku stated as he puffed up his chest with pride, and all the males in the room rolled their eyes. Izuku then got back on track with the conversation. Anyway, the doctor is responsible for making the Nomus. When my father or I put a second quirk in people, they don't look anything like the Nomus quirks do with our quirk vision. Our quirks also can't take the quirks out of the Nomus. Instead, they just end up breaking down if we attempt to do so. Izuku stated, and Nizu and the detective wrote notes down. The staff and detective started to ask questions about anything he knew. Izuku answered anything and everything he could. Soon the meeting came to an end and they were done. Well, this meeting is over for now unless anyone else has something to say? Nizu stated, and Izuku spoke up. In regards to any information of this case about All for One or my quirk and so forth in that regards is deemed need to know the information, meaning you're not allowed to spread it without my approval. You may share the information that is directly about the Nomus and the doctor but nothing else without seeking my approval. Everyone understand? Izuku asked and they all nodded their head. Soon all of the staff left, which left Izuku and everyone from his past. Anyway, I think it's time for me to go, so yeah. Izuku stated as he got up to leave, but Inko called out to him. Son, wait. You should come home. Inko called out and everyone else besides All Might knew that was the wrong thing to say. Izuku scoffed. I already have a home with Stella, and if I went anywhere else it would be back to America with Dad. Also, stop calling me son. You have zero legal rights over me since your custody was removed from you by the courts in America. Izuku stated, and Inko was shocked and asked what he meant by her rights being removed. I mean that you have zero parental rights over me. The courts deemed you unfit to be my mother and stripped you of your rights. Full custody was granted to Hisashi Midoriya in the US courts and my Japanese citizenship was renounced, so Japan's courts have zero say over my custody. Izuku stated. All Might spoke up at that and said they had no right to revoke her custody since Izuku was born in Japan. You're wrong. Inko and my father were married after all, and they were married in America. As such, I am a child that falls into their jurisdiction when he discovered her. The courts didn't require her to be present due to the danger she represented to my life. As such, they reviewed my memories of my life and granted the divorce since Inko had an affair and got married in Japan to you, which voided her marriage in America. Since she voided the marriage, it only gave Hisashi more legal standing about my rights, but my memories of her neglect and Izumi harming me all of the time sealed the deal. She was deemed unfit. Izuku stated, and that silenced All Might and Inko, who were in tears now. Aizawa had gotten up and looked at Inko. This was going to happen regardless. I warned you that day you called me about him running away, and I learned of your treatment towards him that I would remove him from your care. You have no one to blame except yourselves, Aizawa stated, and waved for Izuku to follow him. Aizawa, Stella, and Izuku were in the hallway walking away. Izuku, first off. I owe you an apology. Nizu, Endeavor, Gran Torino, Sir Night Eye, Recovery Girl, the detective, and I all trusted their words, but I should still have done more than send you presents. I should have been more involved in your life, but that was my mistake and not yours. So, I am asking if you would be willing to let me be involved in your life moving forward, or if you just want to keep me as a colleague as pro-heroes. The choice is yours to make. Aizawa said as he bowed his head. Izuku stood there in silence. He then looked at Stella, who nodded her head. Izuku knew he wanted more of his family involved in his life, but he didn't want those members involved. I'll give you a chance, uncle. Here's our address where we live. I'm normally out on patrols while Stella is at school, and I also do patrols during the late night/early morning since I got quirks that make it possible to go on July 24th. Also, I have a surprise for you. Are you free for the rest of the day? Izuku asked him, and he nodded his head. Izuku told him to come to the address in the next house or so, and he would find the surprise. Aizawa said he would be there, and they separated to go on their way. Third POV. After Izuku left them all, Aizawa returned to the meeting room to find All Might and Green Tornado down in their spirits. Aizawa, though, decided to kick them while they were down. So, Inko, you decided to not only to sleep with the former number 1 villain but to sleep with the number 1 hero. Any other number 1s you going for, or is that it? Aizawa asked with a wave of his hand. Inko rolled her eyes at her adoptive brother, who she's on bad terms with now due to her neglect of Izuku. All Might, though, spoke up. I still can't come to grasp that Izuku's is the son of that man. Like, of all people it had to be. The man that ended my master is the father of my stepson. All Might stated, still somewhat in denial of everything. Nizu just drank his tea as he watched the entire thing go down. Gran Torino just spoke up, though. I don't like the fact either, but guess what? From the looks of things he was a better father than you were to Izuku, so we should just be glad Izuku still became a hero instead of seeking revenge on your asses for his childhood, because let's be honest, it was a real strong possibility. Gran Torino stated, and everyone else nodded their heads even though they didn't like the all-for-one issue. They were just glad to have Izuku back for the time being. Nizu looked at Aizawa and saw the paper in his hand. Aizawa, what's the paper? Nizu asked, wondering what it was since he didn't leave with a paper in his hand. This is their residence. Don't even ask you too. I promised him that I wouldn't tell you too, and for everyone else, I'll ask him if he doesn't mind you knowing, but that means keeping it from these two or the three idiotic brats. Aizawa stated, and everyone nodded their heads at that statement, and Aizawa told them that Izuku had some sort of surprise for me at their house, so in the next hour or so he was going to head to their home. They all talked a bit longer before Aizawa decided to head out while the Yagis went to find their daughter. Endeavor followed along to grab Shoto and to take him home. All three of them arrived at the classroom to find all of the students there still. What are you all still doing here? All Might asked in his buff form since he was moving about where people could see him. Everyone said they wanted to try and find more out about Izuku Midoriya. Well, you're out of luck since Izuku and Stella both left already, so I suggest for you all to go home. Endeavor stated, and they nodded their heads as everyone but Yagi, Bakugo, and Todoroki left. Izumi then looked at her parents and asked about her brother. Sweetie, let's talk about it when we get home because that's a complex topic. We've learned a lot of things that we didn't know beforehand, like some secrets about your brother's biological father being a villain, which I didn't know when I had married him all that time ago. Inko said, and Izumi and the two other boys were shocked since they didn't know about Izuku being from a different father. The parents realized they didn't know but agreed to tell them when they got home, but Endeavor stopped them. You know that Izuku told you not to spread the information since it was a part of the case. This would be considered breaching it, you know? Endeavor stated, and the two adult Yagis tensed up at that fact. All Might said something on the lines of surely Izuku wouldn't mind his sister learning of it, but Endeavor shook his head. If you even think of telling them and actually do it, I will inform him and you two will be in legal trouble. You would be breaking numerous hero laws if you tell them, since Izuku deemed it need to know at his approval only, and remember he has more authority than you both. Endeavor stated, and they nodded their heads in defeat while the three kids were confused about what was going on. Izumi, we will say what we can, but a lot of information we are blocked from talking about without your brother's approval. All Might stated, and Izumi wanted answers but had to accept it based on the look Endeavor was giving her parents. Now, outside of those individuals, Aizawa was arriving at the address that Izuku had provided him. He pressed the buzzer and the gate before him opened up. He drove his older car up the driveway and soon was shocked at the house he found. Damn, the kid is being taken care of quite well if this is the house his father is providing for him here in Japan. Aizawa thought. Soon he parked his car and walked to the front door and knocked on it. He heard the door open to find one Kurogiri from the League of Villains. Aizawa went on guard right away but was told to stop by Izuku, who came up to the door behind the villain. Hello, uncle. Come inside. Izuku said and brought his uncle into the house. Aizawa was still on guard though. Problem, nephew. Why is there the villain from the USJ in your home? You said you had a surprise for me, and I don't think this is a good surprise, since they tend to be good in some way. Aizawa stated as he kept an eye on the villain who just sat down on the couch. Izuku just chuckled. It is a good surprise, we just haven't unwrapped the said surprise itself. Izuku stated, and then in came one Hisashi Midoriya. Now son, stop tormenting him. Hello, Shoyuda Aizawa. Hisashi stated as he came in from one of the open wall areas. Aizawa was freaking out since this individual just called Izuku his son, which meant it was all for one. Hisashi Midoriya, I assume? Aizawa said as he shook Hisashi's head. Indeed, thank you for being one of the very few that had shown care towards Izuku in his childhood. Now, I think it's time for the surprise, don't you? Hisashi said as he sat next to Kurogiri. Aizawa was just confused. Hello, sir. It's been years since you brought me back to life, but I am confused about what is going on. Kurogiri asked Hisashi. Hisashi just nodded his head as he looked at Aizawa with something in his eyes that seemed like regret but that just confused Aizawa. Indeed, the thing is, Kurogiri, you weren't meant to be a puppet as you turned out to be. You were meant to be fully revived to your old state. To our former life when I revived you via that quirk I used all those years ago when I found your dead body. However, the process didn't go as I planned, so I had to turn you into this until I found the correct quirk to finish everything. Today, I am here to finish the process and allow you to return to your former life if you wish to. Do you want to? Hisashi asked, and Kurogiri's eyes widened as the best as mist could. Yes. I've always wanted to return to my former life. I would get small shots of my past life and I want to find them. I want to find my friends that I left behind. I want to continue our dreams again. Please return me to my former self. Kurogiri asked, and Hisashi nodded his head. This is going to be painful, but I need you to hold on. Izuku could do this, but I started this and I should finish this. Hisashi stated as he placed his hand on the metal brace and started the process. Aizawa just stood there and watched as the mist man named Kurogiri screamed in pain, and he was conflicted if he should stop this, but he didn't know what was really going on. That is when it happened. When Aizawa's eyes widened at what he saw. He saw his friend from UA who had died years ago. Aizawa was in shock and was wondering what the hell was going on, and then he snapped out of his thoughts when the screaming stopped and there sat his friend Oboro Shirakumo in full view. God, that was painful, Shirakumo stated. He then tried to stand up but fell on his ass in the seat. Be careful, your mind is still adjusting, so give it a minute or two, Hisashi stated, and Shirakumo nodded his head. Anyway, I think there is someone you want to say hi to, Hisashi stated as he motioned to their side, and Shirakumo turned his head and saw Aizawa standing there. Yoshota. How are you doing? Shirakumo stated, and Aizawa just moved over and smacked his head. What the hell do you think I am doing? I am standing here confused on how my dead friend is now alive in front of me, so someone Ifanji needs to explain. Problem, nephew. Explain now. Aizawa said as he turned to Izuku, who just chuckled. It's simple really. Dad here found your former dead friend soon after my birth and took pity, I guess, on him and brought him back, or tried to. It didn't work as he hoped and had planned to finish it, but All Might found him, which meant that Dad never got to finish, and he lost track of him for years until I found him at the USJ. Dad took pity because your friend gave his life for children, and Dad had just seen my birth recently at the time, which made him feel a connection to Shirakumo here, who got brought back. Izuku stated, and Aizawa turned to Hisashi and just bowed his head. Thank you, Aizawa said as he then moved and hugged his now alive friend and broke into tears. Hisashi said it was fine, and then they let the two catch up. After about 30 minutes, Hisashi spoke up again. So there are some matters to talk about. Legally, you are dead in Japan. I did make some arrangements, and the American government has created a new life for you as the same named person in America with the same birth date and everything, but just in America. Now the issue is, what do you want to do with your life? Do you want to become a hero like you used to, or do something else? That will determine the next steps. Hisashi stated, and Shirakumo thought it over. I would like to be a hero again. I want to join my friends, and I think I can be more helpful in that field since I have two quirks now. My birth one and the warp one. Shirakumo said, and Hisashi nodded his head. Okay, then you will need to go to America with me. I will train you for a period of time to ensure you can pass the hero exam in America that I will pay for you to take instead of via a hero school. This way you can return once you have the license and not get in much trouble. It's possible you might also be given a special agent license if they request you due to the warp quirk. You would be just like my son with his special agent license, Hisashi stated, and Aizawa hated the fact that he would be separated from his friend that he just got back. Don't worry, Aizawa. Remember, your friend here has a warp quirk, which means he can just warp to your home every few days to spend time with you. You all just need to figure a schedule out, Hisashi stated, and Aizawa smacked his head, forgetting that, which earned laughs from everyone. Anyway, it's time for me to return to America. How about you both go to Aizawa's home and call your other friends that will want to see him? I will return in a few days to retrieve him, or you can call me when you're ready to head to America and I can just give you the coordinates to my location, Hisashi said, and they all thanked him. Hisashi then hugged his son and told Izuku goodbye. See you, son. Don't get on Stella's bad side and get kicked to the couch again, Hisashi said, and Izuku groaned at that comment. Aizawa and Shirakumo both left to Aizawa's home as well, which left Izuku and Stella alone in their home. Good job controlling yourself today, Iki, Stella said, and Izuku just hugged her and thanked her for the support. Soon they made their way in the kitchen and prepared dinner. Third POV. The next day came and Izuku knew that Stella didn't have classes since the school was cancelled until the next Monday. Izuku decided that he wanted to enjoy time with Stella. As such, he took her out for several days' worth of fun in Japan to see the sights across the nation from Tokyo Tower to Mount Fuji. Izuku wanted Stella to enjoy her time off, and he was sure she was, as Stella was laughing or smiling nearly the entire time as they explored Japan's sights. However, it all came to an end when it was time for Stella to return to UA for school. Izuku had decided that he was going to go and speak to Nizu about getting a job on campus, since a lot of the staff would be involved in the case he is working on and the detective would be leading the police side of the case as well. As such, Izuku woke up early on Monday and got his hero outfit set out. He was glad that he had spare masks and outfits on hand, since they only provided so much protection since he had quirks to provide it. Izuku then saw that Stella woke up and he enjoyed the sight of her waking up and stretching. Izuku walked over to her and kissed her on the lips as she leaned into the kiss. "Hello, Haim. I always enjoy the sight of you waking up," Izuku teased as he glided his hands across her waist, which made her blush hard. "Icky, you are being perverted," she said with a small pout. Izuku just chuckled and lifted her up and took her to the bathroom and sat her down in the tube so she could get ready for the day. He then went back to his work and finished preparing his clothing and outfit, but also got a set of clothing out for her to change into. Soon they finished their morning routine and got changed. Izuku just wore his hero outfit since he was going as the pro hero hunter and not as just Izumi Midoriya. They got into the car and drove off, and Izuku texted his uncle Aizawa that he needed to park his car in the teacher's parking lot since he was driving and wanted to talk to Nizu. Aizawa said that he would be waiting there for him. As such, Izuku arrived at UA to find Aizawa indeed waiting, but with Shirakumo with him as well. Izuku parked and looked at Shirakumo and then at Aizawa. Aizawa understood the hidden question and spoke up. "Yeah, I didn't tell Mike or Midnight. I wanted Shirakumo to myself for the night. They can have him all day today since I got to deal with the problem children," Aizawa stated, and Izuku rolled his eyes. "So what are you going to ask Nizu?" Aizawa asked as they all walked towards the main building. Izuku thought it over and just decided to tell Aizawa. "I'm going to ask him if I can become an employee here on campus, but my main focus will be on the case. I want to bring the doctor to an end soon, and the sooner I do, the sooner I and Stella return to America, but we might wait until she graduates and decided what to do from there, since she's already made friends here, and I don't want to take that away from her since she didn't make many friends since she spent all of her time with me, who was a lonely kid since I didn't go to school. I had issues with dealing with other children due to my childhood, and Stella is honestly the only one to break my walls since I fell for her at first sight." Izuku stated and admitted that he fell for her so quickly, and Aizawa just chuckled at his nephew's love life. Aizawa nodded his head and told Izuku that Nizu would likely hire him as something simple, though Aizawa didn't know of Izuku's degrees. Soon they made their way to the staff room and they entered, and the room went dead silent. Mike and Midnight were frozen in place, and Nizu was in shock at seeing a previous student alive. Even Inko was in shock since she attended UA during the same years as Aizawa and knew of her adoptive brother's dead friend. "Yo, from beyond the grave," Shirakumo stated, and Mike fell over and Midnight fell to her knees. Nizu looked at Izuku for an answer. "Izuku, I feel like you have an answer for this," he asked. Izuku nodded his head. "Everyone meet Shirakumo, aka Kurojiri. I called Dad over to my home from America so he could help me finish the process of reviving him, since he didn't get to finish the process roughly after I was born since All Might attacked him," Izuku said, explaining how it all happened, and Nizu nodded his head. "Overall, Shirakumo will be going with my dad to America soon so he can get a hero license and likely become a special agent as well due to the warp quirk, which is going to be powerful for a special agent. Dad wants to train him to make sure he knows everything before he has the exam set up, then Shirakumo can return to be with Aizawa and everyone else," Izuku stated, and Nizu nodded his head and then looked at Shirakumo. "Shirakumo, if you are in need of a job after getting your license and all, then you are welcomed at UA so you can be near Aizawa and the others," Nizu offered, and Shirakumo thanked him for the offer and said he would let him know once he has the license and everything completed. All Might himself didn't know what to feel since he just learned he screwed a man's life up since he had attacked All for One, but he was glad that the man was healed up now. Anyway, Uncle Nizu, I wanted to ask you for a job for a while since a lot of your staff will be on the same case as me. I also want to spend more time with Stella. Izuku asked as he gave a copy of his resume to Nizu, who looked it over and choked on his tea. How? Nizu asked at reading the resume. Everyone looked confused. I had a lot of time in my childhood due to all the neglect and bullying. So I studied a lot and just tested out of all my elementary to high school. Once that was done, Dad set me up with college classes out of the Ivy League school in New York, where I obtained my degrees and got my PhD in quirk science, and I'm working on the second PhD as well in business management since I helped Dad run the business empire since I was a bit younger. Izuku stated, and everyone was shocked to learn he had a PhD when some of them didn't even have a master's degree. Oh, I also have a teaching certificate in America, though I'm unsure if they transfer to Japan, Izuku stated, and Aizawa broke out into laughter, which confused everyone. God, that's hilarious. All Might, the child you neglected is far more successful than your ass. He's even gotten a teaching certificate when you still haven't gotten one, and yet you took on a teaching job. Aizawa stated with a huge smile as he mocked All Might, who just grumbled about being mocked by his coworkers. Izuku just rolled his eyes and looked at Nizu. I can certainly hire you on. We are actually in need of a quirk specialist, which you fit perfectly. It also doesn't require you to be around all the time, which means you can work on the case during the day as well. You just need to set a schedule of when you will be on campus so students can seek you out for advice to train their quirks. Nizu stated as he pulled out a contract for Izuku to sign, but Izuku looked it over via the quirk he copied from Seth King, the family lawyer. Izuku then understood everything in the contract and crossed out sections he refused and gave it back to Nizu for him to initial where he crossed out. I'm not agreeing to those terms. Remember, I have multiple quirks and one includes understanding contracts, and I'm not stupid, uncle. You might have gotten your staff with those contracts, but not me. Izuku said, and everyone looked at Izuku confused, and Nizu snickered a bit and explained what he hid in the contracts, which included taping their phones and almost everything else. How do you think I always know what you're about to ask of me or something else? Nizu said, and they all paled at the realization they signed away so many of their rights to their evil-ass boss of a rat. Izuku shook his head at his uncle's schemes. Nizu soon made initials next to everything and dated it, and Izuku did the same, and then he signed the contract. Stella, it's time for you to get to class anyway with uncle. Nizu owes me an entire private office as agreed in my contract. Izuku stated, and everyone threw their arms up in protest, but Nizu said they should have negotiated it since Izuku wrote it into the contract for him to agree to. They just all grumbled about being tricked, but Nizu gave them a friendly smile that meant for them to shut up. Stella just rolled her eyes at them all and leaned up and kissed Izuku before leaving with Aizawa to class. Mike and Midnight took Shirakumo off to go enjoy their time before they had to go to their classes, which was the second period. Nizu though took Izuku to his new office location so he could set up a bit. Inko and All Might tried to talk to Izuku, but he just ignored them and didn't bat them an eye. Soon Stella and Aizawa arrived in their classroom, and the students tried to ask Stella a lot of questions, but Aizawa shut it down. He then spoke about how their fight wasn't over yet and that they had the sports festival to do. Stella wanted to wipe the floor with Yagi, Bakugo, and Todoroki in the festival, but wouldn't let pettiness blind her. Soon Aizawa got into his sleeping bag and tried to sleep. Need to ask Iki if he could give Aizawa the power nap quirk. Stella thought as she watched the man try to sleep even though he was dead tired. When the class was given a free period, all the students surrounded Stella to ask her questions about Izumi Midoriya, aka the pro hero hunter. Really? Stella muttered as she rolled her eyes. What do you all want to know? Stella asked them all, and Yagi asked the first question. How did you meet my brother? She asked, and Stella looked at her before speaking. First, I suggest never calling him your brother in front of him. He still hates you a lot for what you and your friends did to him before he ran away. Second, I met him in Central Park of New York when he saved me from some bullies that had claimed the local land or something stupid like that. Stella stated as she answered the question. Izumi flinched a bit at the mention of what she did but kept silent. The next question was from Tsu, who asked what did Yagi do to get hated by her brother. Before Stella could even consider answering, Aizawa spoke up instead. Yagi, Bakugo, and Todoroki decided it was a good idea to physically and verbally bully Izuku Midoriya, formerly Izuku Yagi, due to him formerly being quirkless between the ages of 4 and 9 since he didn't have his quirk. His parents aka Green Tornado and his stepfather All Might neglected Izuku for being quirkless as well. However, their crimes got covered up because of their ranks. Aizawa stated as he had sat up and spoken it all out. He refused to let the 3 kids hide their actions. Everyone turned to the 3 individuals and was staring at them in shock. The next person asked a question and asked what Izuku's quirk was. His quirk is special and is currently hidden, but you could consider it on the lines of a copy quirk since it had that ability. The shadows are what he uses the most of the copied quirks. Stella stated, and it wasn't a lie since it was true. His quirk had a copy feature, and of the copied quirks he uses the shadows the most. Aizawa, who knew the truth, smirked at the white lie, which really wasn't a lie at all. Soon the lunch period was called and they all got up to leave and go to lunch, but the door was crowded by students from other classes. "Hello, what can we do for you?" Stella asked. One boy with purple hair spoke up and said that they were there to declare war on Class 1A and they would be aiming to unseat them and take their position in the hero course. Stella nodded her head and wished him good luck and that she wouldn't go down easily, so he better be prepared for a fight. Then a boy from 1B came over and called 1A arrogant because they survived a villain attack. "We will kick all of your asses and show that 1B is better. Especially better than this pathetic-looking woman in front of me," stated the blonde-haired kid to Stella, and Aizawa knew the kid screwed up when he felt ending intent and knew who it was from. Everyone was scared at the feeling they received. "Oh, you think they are arrogant, but you can't even handle this little ending intent?" They faced a monster that was within a few blows of ending All Might until I arrived and dealt with the beast, and yet you stand here calling my woman pathetic? "You really must be looking to die at my hands," stated the voice, and everyone turned around and were met face to face with the pro-hero hunter, but Class 1A knew it was Izuku Midoriya. The blonde kid though really must have wanted to die since he opened his mouth and asked who Izuku was. "Who the hell are you? You claim that All Might was close to death and that you dealt it, but no one knows of you," stated the boy that was from 1B. "Ah, indeed you wouldn't really know who I am because people like me tend to stay in the shadows where there are far stronger people than All Might hide at. I am a special agent hero. Anyone know what that stands for?" Izuku asked them, and the purple-haired kid from General Studies raised his hand. "It means you have higher authority than most heroes. You handle special assignments that the government and the UN deem as a big threat, and you likely end threats that are deemed too dangerous to keep imprisoned," stated the kid. Izuku nodded his head and spoke. "He's correct, but there's a bit more to it. You see, special agents are limited in number since the missions we handle always have a risk of death, so nations only make them every once in a while. Most special agents are special in some way that they can threaten entire nations. A handful of us can easily end All Might, and there are threats in this world that could easily fight All Might, and we are the people that deal with them. However, I am the pro-hero hunter from America whose case has recently involved UA since the people I'm hunting has attacked the USJ where 1A was at. That's right, people that a special agent like myself are hunting down attacked 1A, and they did well in handling themselves against the lower thugs that were there, but the big threat that I dealt with was within a few blows from ending the symbol of peace himself. However, I can say that my girlfriend Stella here is quite capable of fighting me for a decent amount of time, so I would be careful if she decided to lash out. She's here at UA since my case brought me to Japan from America and we wanted to stick with each other. Any questions?" Izuku asked, and no one raised their hands. Izuku looked at Stella and told her that it was time for lunch. Before he left, he turned to them all with one more thing. "Oh, one more thing. I am also the same age as you all, but I'm already a pro-hero, and starting today I am now a teacher here as well for part-time. Hello, my students who I will enjoy tormenting," Izuku stated with a dark chuckle, and that scared them all to run away. The purple-haired kid though slowly turned around and walked away. "That kid is interesting. I might see if he wants to learn some things from me," Izuku stated as he and Stella walked away. Stella nodded her head since she also found him interesting since he was unaffected by the small amount of ending intent that Izuku had let out. Third POV. Izuku finished having lunch with Stella. Their lunch went without much fanfare as much of 1A was too scared to go near Izuku currently, and only Stella's friends had the courage to go near them and sit down at their table. They didn't feel scared going around Izuku since they met him for a brief time before and they knew Stella would stop him from doing anything to them. As such, the lunch went by without interruption even though Izuku could see his former sister and her friends were looking at him most of the time and wanted to try and talk to him. However, Izuku had no intentions of getting involved with his past so easily or forgiving her either. As such, once the lunch came to an end, Izuku decided it was time to go hunting for a personal student. First, Izuku made a stop at Nizu's office to confirm that he would have no issues taking the student on as a personal student and that he wasn't violating any school rules since he was now an employee. Nizu thought it over and shook his head and said that it was completely fine for Izuku to take on the student. Okay, good. Well, I'm going to go kidnap him from his classes then. Izuku said as he got up to leave, and Nizu just rolled his eyes at Izuku's antics and wished him good luck on getting the student to agree. As such, you could find Izuku walking down the hallways searching for the homeroom that Shinso was a part of. After some searching, Izuku found the classroom and knocked on the door, and was called in. Everyone in the classroom froze at who appeared at the door. Even the homeroom teacher present Mike was frozen. Hello, Hunter. What do you need? Present Mike asked as he was going over the details for the sports festival. Izuku looked at him and then looked around the classroom until he found who he was looking for. Izuku then walked over to Shinso and Present Mike paled. What did you do, Shinso, to catch his attention? Present Mike thought as he just watched. Shinso tensed up and thought he pissed the new teacher off due to earlier actions during the day. Mike. Moving forward until after the sports festival is over, Shinso will not be coming to class. He's my new personal student since I am going to train him for the sports festival. Izuku said as he grabbed Shinso things and smiled under his mask. Just paled a bit since Izuku was far stronger than All Might and somehow got interested in his student. Please just return him alive after the festival? I don't need to do the paperwork for a dead student. Present Mike stated, and everyone in the room including Shinso paled at his words. Izuku walked away with Shinso things and turned back to him. Are you coming or not? I won't offer personal training for the sports festival a second time, so if you decline then that's it. Izuku stated, and Shinso was still frozen in shock but snapped out of his thoughts when Present Mike tapped him on the shoulder and leaned down. I suggest you go. You will increase your odds of succeeding in the festival if you learn from him. Present Mike whispered, and Shinso bolted up and to Izuku at that statement from Present Mike. As such, Izuku led Shinso away to a gym that Izuku asked Nizu for personal use. Shinso kept silent the entire way and was confused about where they were going but knew he was still on campus. They entered some forest area and walked for about 5 minutes until they reached a building that was separated from most of the campus. They walked into it to find an older-style gym and training equipment. From now on you will be coming here the moment school starts. Don't even bother going to the homeroom or anything else. You will get your lunch and then return here after you're done eating. We will be working during the entire time we can to get you as best prepared for the sports festival as we can so you can move into the hero program. Do you understand? Izuku asked. Shinso looked at Hunter and asked why. But why are you training me? Shinso asked, confused on why a pro hero like Hunter would want to train him. Izuku looked at Shinso and then removed his fox mask since he was still in his hero outfit. Why indeed? For many reasons. First, when you were all in the classroom doorway of 1A, you were the only student to not even flinch when I released a small amount of ending intent. Well, except Stella, but that's to be expected since she is my girlfriend and deals with me 24/7. So, you have some good willpower to withstand that since I can make a lot of people, even grown adults, flinch and step back at the amount I had released on all of you. Izuku stated, and Shinso's eyes widened a bit and now understood what that ill feeling was from earlier in the day when he saw Hunter. Izuku thought it over for a bit. He lacks self-worth a bit due to his quirk being viewed as villainous. Izuku thought so he decided to reveal the truth of his quirk. Second reason, what do you think my quirk is? Izuku asked, and Shinso was confused since he didn't know much about it. He did hear it had something to do with shadows and he said what he knew. You would be right to a point. Now let's talk about your quirk brainwashing. Izuku stated, and Shinso tensed a bit. You have lived a life with being looked down upon and scorned. I know the feeling quite well. You were told your quirk is villainous and they are so wrong. It's not the quirk that is villainous but the user that determines it. Do you think I am a villain with my quirk? Izuku stated and asked his question, and Shinso stated he wasn't. Oh, even though my quirk can steal yours and leave you quirkless. Izuku stated, and Shinso's eyes widened. He couldn't believe what he was hearing, and he didn't think a quirk like that existed. How does that even exist? Shinso asked, and Izuku chuckled. It does. My father has the quirk as well, but mine's a bit different. Our quirks are called All for One. It's also a name of a villain, which is actually my father's old villain name when he was a villain for the past 200 years or so until he quit when he had me. My quirk allows me to copy, steal, give, and combine quirks at my will. Do you think this quirk makes me a villain? Izuku stated, and Shinso said no. Then why would you be a villain since my quirk is the manifestation of greed itself? Izuku asked, and Shinso started to feel a sense of pride in his quirk and in himself. Izuku then told Shinso his entire story to help build a connection with Shinso, so he understood that Izuku completely understood being looked down upon, being neglected, being scorned, and that Izuku wouldn't do that to him. So, Shinso, does that answer the question of why I want to train you? Izuku asked, and Shinso nodded his head, and Izuku smiled. Good, it's time we get to training then. We have 2 weeks to get you as trained as we can, but I admit I'm going to cheat it a bit since I'm going to use multiple quirks on you to help us push forward and get better results. One of the quirks that I'm going to use is called Power Nap, which grants us both a full night's rest if we sleep for 30 minutes and I have skin contact with you, so I just need to hold your hand or have it on your shoulder or something. The second quirk is called Growth Aspirement. This quirk allows me to trick your body to increase your metabolism and body growth to speed up the rate of muscle growth and muscle memory. But this means you need to consume a lot of food to maintain the energy you will need, or it can get risky for your health. Izuku stated as he explained the 2 quirks that he was going to be using on Shinso. Overall, you are going to feel like you are going to be dying for a good portion of this training as we need to get your body in better shape but also teach your quirkless combat since you can't rely on your quirk. You are not me where you can just switch quirks if someone figures out a weakness to it. I also want to train you in support gear, but it's pointless right now since you can't use support gear unless it directly aids you medically for your quirk. Izuku stated, and Shinso nodded his head. Get in the ring. Let's start on what you already know for combat so I can see what I am working with, and take your shirt off as well. Izuku stated, and Shinso did as he was told, and Izuku removed his hero outfit top as well, revealing all of his scars, and Shinso knew of them since he was told, but still seeing them all was hard. What did they do to you? Shinso thought but had also said it out loud. They used me like a disposable toy. That's what they did to me, and now they want back in my life, but I don't want them. Shinso, if you ever are in an unsafe situation then tell me, and I will use my authority and power to ensure you are safe. Do you understand me? Izuku stated, and Shinso nodded his head. His foster parents weren't the best, but they never laid a hand on him. They only gave him the basic needs, which were honestly enough for Shinso, so he didn't complain since they never harmed him. Izuku though stared at him and spoke. I also mean if your parents or whoever you are with aren't doing their job in caring for you as they should. Do you understand? Izuku asked, and Shinso gulped and nodded his head but wouldn't look Izuku in the eye, which made Izuku make a mental note to look into it later on. Let's start. I want you to throw a punch at me. Izuku said, and Shinso tried to throw a punch but Izuku just grabbed it and flipped him over. Yeah, that was horrible. Let's just start from basic positions. Izuku said as he made Shinso get into a fighting position, and then Izuku corrected it. They kept doing this for 4 hours until Stella came into the gym. Hello boys, she said, and Izuku saw her and jumped out of the ring and told Shinso to take a break, which made Shinso fall on the ring mat in exhaustion since Izuku worked him hard. Stella just rolled her eyes at the sight since Izuku was not easy to train under. Izuku walked over to her and gave her a kiss on the lips and took a water bottle from her and sat down with her. How is it going? Stella asked him in regards to Shinso. Izuku looked at Shinso and thought it over. It's going. He should be at a decent stage when it comes time for the festival. I am wondering if you mind him coming to the house since I want to get as many hours of training in. We would use the gym in the home to keep training and then have him spend the night in one of the guest rooms for the next 2 weeks. Izuku asked her and she thought it over and nodded her head and agreed to it. Izuku then got up and walked over to the ring. Shinso, would your guardians mind you staying at my house for the next 2 weeks to train? Izuku asked and Shinso looked at him in confusion but nodded his head. They won't care, so it's fine, Shinso stated, and Izuku nodded his head, but that just became another mental note for him to look into Shinso's current guardians, since Izuku refused to let someone be neglected or abused, and Stella could see the thoughts just go across Izuku's eyes without him even speaking. Soon they all packed their things up and Izuku saw Shinso call someone, and he listened in since he had his suspicions that Shinso's family or caretakers were not caring for him as they should. He listened to Shinso as he left a voicemail for his caretakers and said that he would be staying with a friend for 2 weeks as they train for the sports festival, and then he hanged up. Soon, they returned to Izuku and Stella's home. Shinso was surprised at the size and looks of the home and he couldn't help but feel a bit jealous. Let's go down to the gym downstairs. We will get to work and Stella is going to make us dinner while we keep working outside. You need as much training as you can get, so we will keep going non-stop and then use power nap to regain energy to keep going again. Izuku stated, and Shinso nodded his head and followed Izuku down a flight of stairs. It was a smaller gym than the one from UA, but it still had everything they would need and it had a ring to fight in. Izuku and Shinso got into the ring and continued where they left off from the gym at UA, and Izuku did not hold back. Third POV. Izumi Midoriya hated child abusers, he hated people that neglected children, he hated people that harmed those that couldn't really defend themselves, and he really hated it when adults that are meant to care for a child end up taking advantage of the said child. Izuku's blood boiled for anyone in those categories, and he was ruthless in dealing with those types of peoples. As the training went on with Shinso for about a week now, Izuku decided to call the detective and have him start looking into Shinso's caretakers without raising any flags, and the information that Izuku gained was troubling. The caretakers would take in children with what people would deem as villainous quirks, and yet nearly all of them have run away from the caretakers, and it didn't paint a pretty picture. It was as if the children couldn't handle living in the home anymore and decided to run away. Izuku applied for a search warrant on suspicion of child neglect and the fact that so many children had run away from their homes, which painted them as either just horrible caretakers or that the children just were bad. It was barely enough, but with him flashing his special agent license, the judges gave in and allowed him to get his warrants to start searching in deeper. Izuku would go out while Shinso slept, or rather tried to sleep, since it turns out he had insomnia, which Izuku thought he was like a miniature version of his uncle in all honesty. Izuku decided to go look at the address for Shinso's caretakers and slipped into the house via his shadows. He knew the caretakers were out currently at their jobs, so Izuku had a good chance to look around the house, and he didn't like what he found. As Izuku looked around, he noticed the place was worn down and it looked like a place hard to live in. Izuku saw some mold as well and took pictures as evidence. If anything, Izuku thought he could get them on poor living conditions and revoke their ability to foster children, since they received enough money to live in a slightly better place due to taking care of Shinso. As Izuku looked around the rest of the home, he came upon Shinso's room, which was bare. It had a mattress on the floor and barely anything in the room except some clothing and a spare UA uniform. Izuku took pictures of it, and he was really wanting to find out what his caretakers were thinking. As he moved around the home and looked everything over, he noticed that the parents' room was far better in maintenance and living conditions than Shinso's room and the rest of the house. Izuku though noticed that there was a door that leads to somewhere else. Izuku opened it and he was pissed. It led to an entirely separate apartment area that was far better in condition. Izuku took pictures of everything and how the door led into the other apartment area, and that there was evidence of the parents living in it but no signs of Shinso being allowed in it. He texted everything to the detective, who said he would go arrest the foster parents and that Shinso was removed from their custody moving forward and would be moved to a new home, but Izuku didn't allow that to happen. He called the detective after seeing that. "Detective, I am taking custody of Shinso. I will foster him or even adopt him if I need to," Izuku stated, and the detective said it wasn't possible due to age limits. "Detective, do I need to remind you that I have a special agent license? It allows me to get around many laws that restrict me on age, and I doubt this will stop me either. Don't make me take drastic measures." Izuku stated, and the detective was silent and said he would see what he could do and ended the call, but Izuku just called the family lawyer up and asked for legal advice. Seth, are you able to practice law in Japan? Izuku asked Seth King on the phone and Seth confirmed he could. Good, I need to foster a child in Japan that is the same age as me. He's a kid in general studies of UA that I am training for the sports festival and I just had him removed from his foster parents, but the detective on the case is a bit resistant to me taking Shinso due to the age requirements to foster. Izuku stated to Seth King and Seth was silent before speaking. It can be worked around. If anything, we can get your father to adopt the kid and then transfer custody to you via the American courts. I will get working on some legal tactics that you can pull, but you could invoke UA's guardianship over Shinso since he attends the school. This puts him in the custody of UA and then they assign him to the care of one of the teachers, which you are a teacher there now. Seth King stated, and Izuku realized that was true and said he would invoke it if need be but would rather direct custody to be gained. Soon the call came to an end and Izuku went out to continue his patrol and was about 4 hours into the patrol when he received a phone call from the detective. Hello, Hunter. I am calling to inform you that we did charge the foster parents with neglect and mental abuse based on my interview with them and the evidence you found. Shinso is now a ward of the state and needs to go into a foster system again or an orphanage. I can't get the caseworker to agree to let you take him. I'm sorry, the detective said, and Izuku was pissed. Is the caseworker there right now? Izuku asked and got a confirmation. Izuku told him that he would arrive in a few minutes and to keep her there. Izuku quickly headed off in that direction and sent his crows towards it since they could fly faster. As such, in about 5 minutes he ended up teleporting in front of the police station and walked in and went straight towards the detective's office to find the caseworker sitting there. So please tell me why I can't take custody of the child? Izuku asked, and the caseworker looked him up and down before speaking. It's not appropriate or sensible for a child to take care of another child. You wouldn't even have the means to take care of another human being. The caseworker stated, and Izuku resisted the urge to just slam the woman's head into the desk in front of her. Are you stupid? I am a pro hero and I have the wealth to easily take care of another human, so please tell me how I am unable to take care of the child. Izuku asked her and he saw a dark gleam in her eyes. Oh, she's wanting to play it like that? The damn quirkist beach likely hates so-called villainous quirks. Izuku thought as he saw the look in her eyes and recognized it as someone that looked down on others. The women spoke up and started to spout bullshit. This child has a history of causing issues for his caretakers and is unlikely to obey you since you're another child. Also, isn't it illegal for a child at your age to be a pro-hero? She stated and asked him. Izuku chuckled. Not in America, it's not. I am a pro-hero sent here by the American government and I am a special agent, which means the age laws don't apply to me. So you can't use my age against me. So are you going to transfer custody of Shinso to me, or do I need to take more drastic measures? Izuku stated as he showed his special agent license, and she paled a bit at seeing it. She had thought the detective was joking with her and didn't believe that the pro-hero was a special agent, especially when Izuku had arrived. I'm sure we can work something out, she said, and Izuku nodded his head. Indeed, we will work this out by you transferring his custody to me in full and allowing me to be his foster parent. Do you understand me? You will also do it right now and it will be done in full before I leave. Izuku stated, and she nodded her head and started working on it. After about an hour and a half, she was done and handed him the paperwork to sign. He used the contract understanding quirk and looked through it and saw that it would only grant him custody for 30 days. He slammed it down and gripped her shoulder and looked her in the eyes behind his mask. Do you take me for a fool? This only grants me custody for 30 days before he is required to go to the foster system. Izuku stated, and she paled since she hid that language deep in the contract and was confused on how he found it. Fix it and make it state that he's in my custody permanently and can't be revoked without a court order. Do you understand me? Izuku asked, and she nodded her head and quickly made the changes. The detective just stayed silent the entire time since he was kind of afraid due to how pissed Izuku was. Soon the lady finished the paperwork and Izuku signed the new work and the detective signed as a witness. The lady then submitted it and said it was done. Yeah, fanfic logic of how quickly it works. Izuku said she was free to go and he looked at the clock and realized Stella and Shinso would be awake sooner or later. He then looked at the detective and told him to look into the caseworker since she's clearly a quirkist beach, and he nodded his head. Izuku soon arrived at his home and slipped into bed with his girlfriend and slept long enough that his power nap quirk activated and gave him all the energy he needed. Though, he was awoken about an hour and a half later when Stella got up. Izuku got up as well and filled her in on the details. "So, I am a foster mother now?" she asked as she tilted her head and Izuku choked on his drink. I guess? It's more I am a foster father since he's under my care, but you're dating me, so I guess? Congratulations, but don't go spreading that since I think he would be embraced for people to find out. I will need to inform the staff of UA, but the other students don't need to know. If anyone asks why we three appear close, then tell them the truth of him being my personal student, which would explain why he's near you a lot. Izuku stated, and she nodded her head, and they finished getting ready and headed downstairs to the kitchen and living room. They saw Shinso drinking coffee and a small breakfast, and then he saw them. "Sorry, I helped myself," he said, and Izuku waved him off. "It's fine, but we do need to talk about a separate matter when we are all done that I want to talk about before we go to UA. Izuku stated, and he nodded his head. After about 30 minutes they were all done eating and they sat down in the living room and looked at each other. "So, I'll be honest. I had my suspicions of your home life from the start, and the things you said tipped me off on it. I investigated your home life and your foster parents are under arrest already since last night. You've been assigned to someone else now," Izuku stated, and Shinso broke into tears. "Why? But the new ones likely won't let me continue to you. It was my dream," Shinso yelled as he stood up, and Izuku looked at him in the eyes before speaking. "I know it's your dream and it's why I couldn't let you stay in that type of home without being cared for. I've already arranged your contained education at UA with the new foster parents, which happens to be me and Stella, or rather me mainly," Izuku stated, and took a sip of his coffee, and Shinso froze and just stood there in a frozen manner. Stella rolled her eyes and slapped Izuku on the head and scolded him for saying it that quickly. Shinso turned to her and she explained, "My idiot love here means that you will live here from now on. He threatened the caseworker to put you in his custody as a foster child and him the foster parent. So that doesn't make me met your foster mother since I and him aren't married yet, but in a way, it kind of does, but you don't need to see us like that. Anyway, you don't need to worry about going hungry or anything since both of our families are wealthy and we can easily take care of you. So the room you're sleeping in is now yours from now on," Stella stated, and Shinso broke down into tears and fell to his knees. Why are you doing this for me?" Shinso asked, and Izuku shrugged. "Honestly, you reminded me of when my father found me when I ran away from my old family. I was just lucky Dad was my biological father and could take me away easier. I just felt like I needed to do it since I couldn't live with myself seeing you in that home and not actually being happy when I could provide you better. I can't exactly be a father, I guess, since we are the same age, but I can be a brother who takes care of you," Izuku asked as he leaned down and hugged Shinso, who hugged back. Stella looked at the time and realized they would need to leave soon. "Boys, hate to break this up, but it's about time for us to go," Stella said, and they looked at the clock and agreed. Izuku told Shinso that he would need to inform UA of the change, but any of the students' knowledge of the situation is up to him since Stella and Izuku would just tell them the truth of him being Izuku's personal student to cover up the closeness. Soon they headed off to the school and started their last week of training, and if Shinso supported a large smile all day, then Izuku and Stella never said anything about it at all. Third POV. Izuku sent Shinso straight to the gym to start training and told him that he would be there as soon as he can since he needed to update the staff on his situation and then the case he was working on as well. As such, Izuku found himself in the staff room and they were all surprised to see him since he only stopped training with his personal student to eat lunch, go home, or do his office hours as the quirk specialist. "Why hello Hunter. What brings you out of your training spree?" Nizu asked in a joking tone. "Multiple things. First, need to update you on the case since I found some clues during patrols. There has been some word around that the League is recruiting more experienced members for another attack one day, so we need to be careful moving forward in the future, but I don't know how long it will take for them to recruit, but I don't expect any attacks to happen until maybe closer to the end of the semester. I've also localized the areas that they might be into a list of prefectures based on some information that I got from Shirakumo. A lot of information he lost since the doctor always used someone with a mind-wiping quirk, but there was enough to exclude some prefectures out based on what he remembered. I do know that the doctor has a second location that may be outside of the listed zones though, since Shirakumo said that he's gone to a separate location once before, but that the doctor uses a different teleportation quirk to move around sometimes instead of using him. Izuku informed everyone and they nodded their heads. Izuku then was silent for a few moments before deciding on how to phase the next topic. So about the second thing, I am a father now, Izuku said, and anyone that was drinking anything was choking or had spit their drink out. All Might and Inko, who had just walked in right at that, both fell over in shock and were out cold. Oh nice. I just ended them. Yes. Izuku said, and Aizawa shook his head. They aren't dead, only out cold from shock. Now explain how you are now a father? Aizawa said with glaring red eyes and had his quirk on. You know that does nothing to a person with as many quirks as me, right? You only turn off like 1 or 2 from what I can feel. Izuku ached and Aizawa grumbled. Anyway, I did not get Stella pregnant. We haven't hit that stage and likely won't for a while since we let our relationship just flow as it goes, which we are happy with. However, I've gotten foster custody of Shinso. I had his foster parents arrested for neglect and mental abuse. So Nizu, you need to update his file to my information since he lives with me from now on. Izuku stated, and Nizu nodded his head and Aizawa sat down in his chair and sighed in relief. Thank God. I didn't want to be a granduncle this soon. Okay, that is fine with you taking care of him since you can without a doubt afford it. Does your father know though? Aizawa asked and Izuku shrugged. Most likely, since I had warned the family lawyer who likely told him and speak of the devil and he will call. Izuku said as his phone went off and it was Hisashi calling. Hisashi asked what the situation was with Shinso and Izuku explained everything and Hisashi said to bring the kid around sooner or later so he could meet him. Izuku agreed and hung the phone up after they were done, and the Yagis had woken up a bit after that and asked what he meant by him being a father. If you want details then go ask Nizu, Izuku said as he walked away, and they turned and got the details from Nizu. So no grandbabies? Inko said and Aizawa rolled his eyes. Even if he had a kid that was his or younger then you wouldn't be grandparents since he doesn't see you like family, Aizawa said as he walked by to go to his classroom for homeroom before dismissing his class for them to go train. Soon, Izuku himself arrived back at the gym that he and Shinso were training in and found him working out. Okay, let's review your quirkless combat, and then we will do some physical training since your body is almost at a good stage that I am happy with, Izuku stated, and Shinso nodded his head and jumped into the ring. Soon they were sparring and Izuku would randomly use quirks against Shinso. The first time that Izuku did it, Shinso complained about being unfair, but Izuku quickly shot back that the world wasn't fair and that he would need to fight against quirks in the festival regardless when they figured his quirk out. As such, Shinso has gotten much better at dodging attacks from quirks and handling his situation well. About halfway into the day, it was time for lunch and Izuku heard the door open and saw Stella with lunch for all of them. Ah, you brought lunch for all of us, love. Thank you, Izuku said as he jumped out of the ring, and Shinso followed soon after. They all sat down on a bench and started to eat. Stella, how is your training going since I haven't been able to help? Izuku asked, and Shinso flinched at that and shrunk in on himself, which Stella noticed. Shinso, don't blame yourself for him not helping me. I've trained with him and his father for a long time, so it's nothing to not have him helping since I can already fight Izuku in quirk combat for a long period of time, so I'm confident in wiping the floor with all of my classmates, Stella said, and Shinso nodded his head and untensed. Stella then talked about how she was working on a new super move since overall her combat was good enough and she wanted more finishing moves to have. She then asked Izuku about Shinso's training. It's going through. I wish we had more time. I will have the time after the festival as well, but I want him as prepared as he can be. I don't see many issues for most people he will fight, but there are some that will cause him trouble once they know his quirk. Depending on the rounds, I see him in the top 10, and then it all depends on who he faces and if they know his quirk, Izuku told her, and then he looked at Shinso. Shinso, try to avoid using your quirk as long as you can and rely on your physical performance as long as you can. Your quirk will give you an advantage in the 1 versus 1, but if someone figures it out then you will be fighting quirkless the entire time unless you can get them to speak. So the fewer times they have to study it the better. Izuku stated, and he nodded his head. Izuku then looked Shinso's body over and noticed it was getting closer to being in a good physical fitness state. Izuku thought some things out as he ate and decided to teach Shinso a special set of moves. Shinso, in the ring. I'm going to teach you a set of moves. Quirks are the manifestation of the quirk gene from the human's bodies, but some are shown in different ways. Mental quirks and so forth. Even emitter quirks can be affected via this set of attacks. These moves will allow you to disable the said quirks for a brief set of time. They are hard to get down, but I think you might get them, so let's work on them. Izuku stated, and Shinso's eyes light up at that information and jumped in the ring with Izuku and started to learn the new sets of moves from him. Izuku taught him the basic information of where he needed to hit at and a warning that this could also cause someone to go into shock since Shinso would be messing with their nerves since the brain controlled everything, even a quirk. They tested it out on Izuku shadow clones. Since if they died then that was fine, but the effects would be the same as if it was a real body. After 2 entire days of working on the moves, Shinso was able to successfully do it several times and kept refining his movements. It was now the last day of training and Izuku wanted to go over everything that Shinso had learned and had asked Stella to fight him in an open forest area. Shinso would not be provided any support gear since he wouldn't get any in the festival, but Stella had her sword which she could create. It doesn't matter if you lose. What matters is how long you last and how well you fight, since Stella could last a decent amount of time in a serious battle against me, which means she will be a good indicator depending on how long you last against her. Izuku stated, and Shinso nodded his head and was ready for the fight. Izuku called for the fight to start and Shinso charged forward since he knew that Stella knew of his quirk, so he didn't even bother. As Shinso went charging at her, Stella created a fire sword and blasted fireballs at him, which he kept dodging and slowly making his way forward. His agility is much better than when we started, and most normal people would be hard-pressed to dodge the rapid fireballs that she is sending out. Izuku thought as he watched the fight. Then it happened. As Shinso got closer he dodged a fireball and Izuku noticed that Shinso had grabbed dirt from the ground and hid it in his hands. As Shinso got up closer he threw the dirt towards Stella, which made her close her eyes to protect her eyes from getting stuff in it. This allowed Shinso to close the distance and used the moves that Izuku taught him and disabled her quirk for a brief time. Stella cursed and pushed forward since she was strong in quirkless combat as well. This is where Shinso started to lose since Stella was far better than Shinso was with only a few weeks of training, harsh training, but still only 2 weeks of it when Stella has gone years with the Midoriyas training her. As the fight was going on, Shinso was pinned, and then out of nowhere he asked a question. "Can you get off me, mommy?" He asked, and Stella uttered a response before she could catch it because it shocked her so much that he called her mommy. "Get off me and walk out of the ring," Shinso stated, and she complied and he won. He then broke the connection and she turned to him and then turned away with a massive blush on her face as Izuku fell to his side and laughed. "Dad, it's not nice to laugh at Mom," Shinso said, and Izuku cried out a what before he realized what happened. Then he was released out of the quirk and he looked at Shinso who had a grin on his face and then looked at Stella who had a smirk. "Indeed, it's not nice to laugh at me, my dear," Stella said, and Izuku rolled his eyes before he had a grin on his face. "Oh. That means we admit that Shinso is our kid now. I'm fine with that. Congratulations on being a mother at 15, my love," Izuku stated with a grin as he decided to lift Shinso up in his arms and rock him side to side, which caused him to blush hard. "Wait, I didn't." He tried to cry out, but Izuku wasn't having it. "Nope, you're our child from now on. Doesn't matter that we are all the same age. I am a dad now and want to be called as such. My old man will be happy to know his 200-year-old ass now is a grandfather," Izuku stated, and Stella was still frozen at Izuku's comments. Then she snapped out at the grandfather's comment and broke into laughter. "You know what, Shinso, if you want us to be your parents then that is fine with me, since Izuku will be giving me an anti-aging quirk in a year or 2 so that we can live for centuries, so it doesn't matter to me. I also want to see what my parents do when they learn they are grandparents now," Stella said as she started to laugh. Shinso was just embraced with himself as he was trying to hide his face, but Izuku was still carrying him. Stop, please. You are going to make me desire something that can't happen. Shinso said, and Izuku looked at Stella and nodded his head, and she did the same. Shinso, we are serious. If you want to see us as parents, we are fine with it. It indeed would be weird to others, but we are fine with it. So take your time and let us know if you want to be Hitoshi Midoriya, and I can adopt you at any moment's notice. Izuku stated, and Shinso looked at him in shock and then looked at Stella. He then broke into tears as Izuku and Stella hugged him. Both of them knew that they would never be conventional people, and this was just another thing unconventional about them, since it seemed they just adopted a child the same age as them. Shinso then asked them if they would adopt him, and they nodded their head as Izuku pulled his phone out and called the family lawyer. Seth, I need you to set up the adoption paperwork for Shinso. I want him to be adopted by Stella and myself, and he will take on the Midoriya last name, so moving forward he would be Hitoshi Midoriya. Izuku stated, and Seth said he would get working on it and get the commission president to help leverage it and get Shinso American citizenship as well. Izuku then looked at Shinso and told him it would be a bit of time, since they would need to apply some pressure on officials to get it done, since it's an international adoption, since Izuku and Stella were foreigners in Japan. You will be granted American citizenship after a while and become Hitoshi Midoriya, but you can go ahead and tell anyone you are our kid, because I am without a doubt flaunting it to the staff. I can't wait to make All Might and Green Tornado collapse in shock again. Also, regardless of what they say, you are not their grandchild. Screw them. Izuku stated with a grin, and Shinso fell to his side in laughter. Stella just rolled her eyes and was interested in seeing how her parents reacted to this, so she texted them and waited for the phone call. 5 minutes later her cell phone was buzzing and she answered it to a scream from her father. What do you mean I am a grandfather? I knew you two might screw each other, but come on, you two. Francis yelled, and Izuku laughed with Stella. Francis, calm down and let me explain, Izuku said into the phone, which was on speaker. Francis stated with a rough tone, and Izuku explained how Shinso came into their lives and that they first took him in as a foster child, since Izuku didn't want his dreams of going to UA to get ended, but then Shinso made a joke about Stella being his mother in a spar to win, which evolved into them adopting him moving forward. Francis was silent for a few minutes before speaking. So she's not pregnant? He asked, and Izuku said no. Thank God. No pregnancy until she is graduated, please. Okay, so Hitoshi is the same age as you two, right? Francis asked, and Izuku confirmed. God, you two are a weird couple, but the entire Midoriya family is a complex mess to start with, so I am not surprised by something like this. Okay, well, bring him to visit us sooner or later when you guys have a break or something. I am going to go back to sleep since you children are making me feel old. Francis stated as he hung the call up without even checking with them that the call was over, and Stella fell to her side in laughter. Suddenly Izuku's phone vibrated with a text message from Hisashi. It read that he had seen this coming from the two of them and wanted them to visit during the break. Izuku rolled his eyes at his father's text and showed the others. Let's call the training over and just relax, since there is only the weekend left before the sports festival and you two need to relax for it, Izuku said, and they all nodded their head as they headed to the house, and Izuku gave Hitoshi a credit card and explained that he could use it for whatever, since Izuku made enough money from the pro hero work and then the family wealth as well. You belong to the family more than you did starting today out, so just accept it. We are your parents now, so just spend what you need to for any of your needs or wants. I'm not saying to go spend like crazy, but don't worry about feeding yourself or buying yourself a drink from a soda machine or anything else. Just use it freely, and if I see an issue with spending, I will bring it up to you if I think you are spending like crazy, which I doubt I will need to. Okay? Izuku asked, and Shinso nodded his head. Soon they all enjoyed dinner and went about their night. Third POV. Izuku, Stella, and Hitoshi all got up and did their normal routines, and got ready for the day. Izuku got into his hero outfit and waited for the other two. Come on, son. You're going to be slower than your mother, which is hard to do, Izuku said, but regretted it right away when he got hit in the back of the head with a brush from a glaring Stella. Ops, Izuku said with his hands raised, and Hitoshi just walked by snickering, which earned a glare from Izuku. Watch yourself, Izuku, or you will end up on the couch. Stella stated as she walked by Izuku, who paled a bit, and Hitoshi only broke out in laughter at Izuku's face. "Oh, woes is me. My son has betrayed me for his mother. Where did all the male bonding between father and son go?" Izuku fake pouted, and Hitoshi just groaned out at that comment and shook his head as Izuku just hugged onto him and dragged his feet a bit. Stella just rolled her eyes with a smirk on her face. All three of them have gotten closer, and Hitoshi has started to call them mother and father more often since he craved positive attention from parental figures in his life. Izuku knew that Hitoshi would need therapy like he did when he was a child, but that would likely take time to get him to agree to it. Soon they were all in the car and were off to UA. After they arrived, Izuku split off from the both of them and left to the staff room. He saw that the Yagis weren't in the staff room yet, so he got everyone else's attention. "Excuse me, Beaches. I have an announcement to make," Izuku said, and they all rolled their eyes at his dramatic flair. Nizu just looked at him without changing expressions. "So you all know how I took Hitoshi in as a foster child over a week ago?" he asked, and they all nodded their heads. Izuku smirked, and Aizawa felt a headache coming. "Well, as of last Friday the plans have changed and now it will be an adoption, so Hitoshi Shinso will be Hisashi Midoriya once the paperwork is done. This means Stella and me will be parents," Izuku stated with a smirk on his face. That statement did get a reaction out of Nizu as he did a spit take with his tea and looked at Izuku as if he grew a second head. Even the other staff were all frozen as Aizawa smacked his face and groaned. "Why?" he asked, and Izuku explained what happened in the spar between Stella and Hitoshi, and they were all impressed he won the spar but laughed when they heard how the adoption process started. "If you would mind, don't tell the Yagis since they don't need to have anything to do with him. I've already told everything about my past, my quirk, my father, his quirk, and anything I could think of to Hitoshi, so they can buzz off since he doesn't like them either," Izuku stated, and they all nodded their heads at that. Izuku then decided to just sit down and do some paperwork since they would all be moving to the sports festival stadium in an hour or so since it would be starting soon. After an hour or so they all made their way to the stadium, and the students were also entering their waiting rooms. That is how Stella found herself being talked to by Yagi, Bakugo, and Todoroki, who all challenged her to a fight and wanted to wager Izuku coming back to them. That just annoyed Stella. "You still haven't changed, have you?" she asked them, and they looked confused. She stood up and scoffed at them. "You still act as if he is some piece of property that you can control when he is a human being. You have zero rights to make any decisions for him and Yagi. Your mother doesn't even have any custodial rights to Izuku either since the courts deemed her unfit to be his mother, so how about you stop trying to treat him just like you did all those years ago? It's disgusting and pathetic," Stella stated before walking off, and everyone was confused by what Stella meant and looked at the three for answers, but they didn't speak since they were frozen. They didn't know that a court deemed Inko unfit and was confused on how tea had happened without them knowing about it, but decided they would need to ask the Yagis later. Soon they were all called out to the field, and Present Mike did his introductions for all of the classes. "Now, let's have the first-year representative who took first in the hero course exam but also first in the written exam. Stella Vermilion," Present Mike called out. Stella went up to the stage and waited for the crowd to quiet down. She then spoke once they did. "Today, we gather here to show off our abilities but to show the world the new generation of heroes, of business leaders, and support creators. We are here to declare to the world who we are and what we want to inspire in this world. If we inspire peace, if we inspire hope, if we inspire determination, we are the new generation, and like every generation, we will have our flaws and errors, but we will look at the past generation and strive to be better than they were and to fix the flaws that we can see with their generation. So watch us as we all stand on this stage and make our declaration to the world that we don't need to rely on the old guard anymore, for we are the new guards of society. Let us go beyond, plus ultra," Stella stated, and everyone broke out into a cheer at her words as they were inspirational. Soon, the first round was called to start, and it was an obstacle course around the stadium. Stella stayed near the back since she was just going to fly over everyone, and she just waited for the starting gun to go off. Hitoshi, though, was near the front and was ready. Right as the gun went off, Hitoshi darted off, and he was glad that he had trained a lot with Izuku, which included stamina training. As he was running, he saw something fly over his head and saw it was Stella with her fire wings. I knew I wasn't going to beat her in this anyway, Hitoshi thought as he kept running. There was only a handful of people in front of him the entire time, which sadly included all of the people that harmed his adoptive father. The race kept going forward, and the first obstacle was the 0-pointers from the entrance exam, which Stella just went straight through as she sent a path of fire melting right through the robots, which destroyed them as well. Stella also flew right over the open pit as well, and she rolled her eyes thinking that this obstacle course did nothing against people with flying abilities. Hitoshi was making his way across the tight metal roads and made his way across the open pits and soon made his way to the next obstacle course and kept going. As everyone was nearing the end, Hitoshi decided to pull a Midoriya and dug up the mines and slammed a metal part down on them as they exploded him and sent him flying forward and past Izuku's abusers. He then slammed down again, which caused anti-air explosion, knocking them into landmines on the ground. Hitoshi then landed and ran and made it to the end, which meant he came in second place with Stella in first. The abusers from Izuku's past came in 5th, 6th, and 7th place, with some others coming in 3rd and 4th. Hitoshi was so happy with himself for placing second place. Soon, the last 42nd person came into the arena and the second round was called to a start. It was a kind of hill-type game, but with 16 pillars that people had to maintain control of to get into the next round, as only 16 people would move on to the final rounds. Hitoshi knew he would likely end up using his quirk in this portion of the exam and hated it, but knew he would need to use it lightly. He also remembered Izuku's advice to disguise the activation trigger with hand movements or some sort of distraction such as widening one eye or something to make people think the trigger was something else. As such, the round started with all 42 people, and Stella just stood on the top place and created a ring of fire that stopped everyone from getting to her. The crowd went wild over her dominance in the sports festival. Shinso himself went for a spot in the middle, deciding not to push for the top spots since stronger people would go for them and the weaker students would fight for the lower ones since they were easier to get to. As such, Shinso planned his strategy out and just waited the storm out, as not many people tried to go for his position, and the ones that did he was able to defeat without using his quirk since they were weaker in the physical department than he was. As such, the time dragged on, but the time was finally called and the last 16 people were announced. Stella took the first place spot again and Shinso took 10th since he stayed near the middle of the pack the entire time. They were all given time for an hour break and Izuku decided to go meet the both of them for lunch. As such, he got up and left the staff booth, but Inko and Toshinori tried to stop him and ask him to join them for lunch, but he used his quirk to disappear into the shadows. What they were not expecting though was for their daughter, Bakugo, and Todoroki to appear about 5 minutes later with questions about Inko having her rights as a mother for Izuku removed by a court. "How did you guys hear about that?" Inko asked, and they said that Stella stated it in the 1A waiting room when they had challenged her to get Izuku back, and Aizawa just smacked his forehead when he had walked in since he was at the announcer's booth. "Really? Are 3 idiots?" he stated, and they looked at him. "I'm considering expelling you if this is really how you are acting, since it shows you haven't changed at all from all those years ago. You're still treating Izuku as an object that you can do whatever you want with. Hound dog, they need more therapy," Aizawa stated as he just walked right back out the door, and Hound Dog responded that he would talk about it in their sessions. They were shocked to be told the same thing that Stella had told them. The Yagi's parents though shook their heads and explained what they could without giving everything away. If Stella or Izuku did, then that was their right, but the Yagi parents were still blocked by Izuku's order as a special agent to not reveal the information. As such, the 3 children were still left with questions but had no answers for them since the adults didn't provide them, and only responded that they were blocked from talking more about it without Izuku or Stella talking about it first. Third POV. Izuku arrived in the food court and soon found Stella and Hitoshi sitting at a table together with a spare plate of food. "Is this food mine?" Izuku asked, and Stella nodded her head. "Thank you, love," Izuku stated, and Stella smiled and said it was no problem. "Good job, Hitoshi, in placing second in the first round and 10th in the second. You also haven't had to use your quirk either, which is amazing since it shows the school that you aren't reliant on your quirk," Izuku stated as he ate, and Hitoshi thanked him for the training, and Izuku nodded his head. Stella then informed Izuku what his past abusers tried to do in the waiting room of 1A, and Izuku was annoyed with them. "I see they still treat me as an object they can do as they please with," Izuku stated as he shook his head and just kept eating his food. Hitoshi was also annoyed but put it outside of his mind since he knew his adoptive father could easily handle himself with the 3 people from his past without problems. After a while, Endeavor walked over to the group and Izuku waved at him. "Hello, uncle," Izuku said, and Hitoshi looked at the man. "So the number 2 hero is my granduncle or something now?" he asked, and Endeavor looked confused as hell since he's never met this kid. Izuku chuckled and confirmed that he was indeed his granduncle, and Endeavor was even more confused. "What did they explain?" he asked Izuku, and Stella decided to speak up first and explained how it all happened, and Endeavor just shook his head. "I should expect nothing less from you, honestly. Just don't get Stella pregnant before graduation and it's all fine," Endeavor said as he made small time before he said he needed to return to his seat since it was getting close to the time for the rounds to start. They all said their goodbyes as Endeavor just walked away, rubbing his head from the migraine he just received, and Izuku was just smirking the entire time. They all decided to go back to their seating areas since the rounds would start soon, as Endeavor pointed out. Izuku went back to the staff room while Hitoshi went to the general education section and Stella went towards 1. Stella walked into the 1A section to see Yagi, Bakugo, and Todoroki staring at her, and she just rolled her eyes at them, which annoyed them. "They really don't learn, do they?" she thought as she sat down with her friends. "So Stella, did you enjoy lunch with your SXY man?" Mina asked her, and Stella easily confirmed it. "Indeed, we did enjoy our time together, and yes, he is SXY as hell. It's amazing to wake up in the morning with him at my side," Stella stated without blushing, but the other girls were all blushing hard at the mental image, and Yagi was pissed about what she was hearing since she had a brother complex. They just sat there talking for a bit longer until the first round was called. The first people fighting was going to be Kaminari versus the Vine Girl in 1B. Let's just say that it didn't go as people would think, as Kaminari short-circuited himself quite easily. Izuku was sitting in the staff booth and was wondering how he even got in the hero course and decided to ask Nizu. "Nizu, how did he even make it into the hero course?" Izuku asked, and Nizu pulled up the video of the exam showing him directly touching and shocking the robots, which only required him to put off the electrical current for a very brief period. An example of why the exam is so biased, Izuku stated as he rolled his eyes. They kept watching the battles as they moved forward and forward. Soon it was Stella versus Bakugo, and Izuku knew how that was going to go. "Stella won't need to use much effort to win this," Izuku stated, and everyone looked at him, but then heard the fight start and saw Stella use her quirk to cut off the fire from Bakugo's quirk, which made him fall out of the air and onto the ground. Confused but realized what she did as Present Mike spoke out. "Ladies and gents, Vermilion's quirk allows her to control all fire even from her enemies, meaning she can stop Bakugo's explosions as they happen, which he needs to use his quirk. Means he is quirkless in this fight." Mike yelled out, and everyone cheered as Stella sent a wave of fire at Bakugo, forcing him to donate since he couldn't ignite his sweat on his own, and the explosion sent him out of the ring with burns on him. "Damn, she took him out quickly," Snipe stated, and the other staff nodded their heads. Hitoshi had to fight a kid from 1B that had a copy quirk, but Hitoshi didn't use his quirk and knew to keep his mouth shut as well. As such, Hitoshi engaged in quirkless combat and had the kid pinned to the ground in a chokehold and stopped him from escaping, which resulted in him getting called out. Hitoshi walked off the stage with his head held high since he had just made it into the top 10. More matches went on and the final 4 people were shown. It was Stella versus Todoroki, which the staff knew how that was going to go, and then Yagi versus Hitoshi. The staff that knew that Hitoshi was Izuku's kid was tense and worried he would go blastic if Yagi harmed Hitoshi too much, but Izuku had a smirk on his face, which confused the staff and kind of made them a bit scared of what would happen in that match. Stella's match, which just as everyone in the staff booth predicted it to go. Stella had sent a lot of fire that put Todoroki's ice to no use and then cancelled out his fire or even took control of it. She never even moved from her starting position in any of her matches, which did not get missed by anyone. She dominated the field and it showed. Now though, it was time for Yagi versus Hitoshi, and Izuku sat on the edge of his seat with a smirk. The match was called to a start and Hitoshi charged off at her while Yagi tried to use her quirk to grab a hold of him, which she did, but he gripped the ring and refused to let go, which made her get up close to force him out. That was a horrible mistake on her part, as the moment she did he hit her right where Izuku taught him to and blocked her quirk usage. She was stunned and he spoke to her. "Confused on why you can't use your quirk?" he asked, and she nodded her head and asked why, which got her trapped in his quirk. "Walk to the edge of the ring and step out," Hitoshi ordered, and she did just like that, but the moment she got to the edge a burst of One for All activated. "Really? Can't the past user's FNG not intervene in a tournament?" Izuku cursed in his mind as Hitoshi was shocked but got out of it and charged her. She turned around in shock and was holding her hand as it was broken from the discharge of her quirk, since she's never gotten a good control of it. She charged the quirk up and slugged at him as he dodged it right under her punch and grabbed her and threw her out of the ring since she was so close to the edge. "That's it. Yagi lost the match by ring out." Present Mike yelled out and Hitoshi pumped his fist into the air. "Yes." Izuku cheered in the staff booth. "Izuku, who do you think will win? Your Shinso or your future wife?" Nizu asked, and Izuku thought it over for a bit. "It's hard. Hitoshi has beaten Stella once already. But I doubt she will fall for the same thing, so he will need to think hard, and there is also no dirt for him to throw into her eyes either like last time. I think Stella will pull a win on this one since she has a field advantage here," Izuku stated, and Nizu nodded his head. Regardless, Hitoshi has proven himself capable enough to be moved directly to the hero course, Nizu stated, and the staff nodded their heads. All Might though made a stupid decision to open his mouth. "Sir, wouldn't we need to remove someone from the hero course since the classes are full?" All Might stated, and Izuku decided to take a shot at him. "We could easily remove Yagi or Bakugo or Todoroki since they really should never have been admitted in the first place with their past actions per UA policy," Izuku said with a smirk, and All Might and Inko looked like they wanted to object to it but knew they couldn't. Nizu though rolled his eyes at Izuku being petty and spoke up. "We can have 21 students in a class. 20 isn't a requirement to keep, but that is where we keep it to keep a 20-to-1 teacher ratio for the hero course, but we can let that go for now," Nizu stated, and Izuku rolled his eyes. "Fine, but he goes in 1A since Aizawa is there and Hitoshi will be an underground hero like him and can learn from him when I am not around to help him learn privately," Izuku stated out, and Nizu nodded his head at Izuku's request. Soon it was time for the last round to start, and it was Hitoshi versus Stella, and they both came out to the field. "Ladies and gents, it's 1A Phoenix Queen Vermilion going up against the underdog from General Studies who has thrown this tournament on its head, Shinso. Let's watch the final fight." Mike yelled out, and soon the match was started and Hitoshi ran around the fireballs that she sent, and she knew she couldn't pull the staying in one spot thing as she made fire wings and flew into the air. "Well, that complicates things for Shinso now, doesn't it?" Mike yelled out as the crowd went wild. Hitoshi just kept dodging the fireballs and was getting annoyed. "Come on, stop picking on me," he cried out, and Stella just chuckled but didn't respond back. As the fire kept going on, Hitoshi just raised his hands and gave in. "I surrender. I got no way of winning this without some support gear since she can stay in the air the entire time," Hitoshi called out, and Midnight accepted the result of the match. This resulted in Stella coming in the first place and Hitoshi coming in second. The third place was shared by Yagi and Todoroki. They were all called out to the stadium to receive the rewards, and the one giving them was sadly All Might. Stella and Hitoshi both rejected a hug from All Might, which raised eyebrows, but no one commented on it at that time. All Might just went with it and pushed forward and ended the sports festival. Soon, Hitoshi was called to the staff booth and told he would be moved into Class 1A starting the coming Monday and to report to the classroom moving forward. Hitoshi broke down in tears, and Izuku just hugged him and leaned down and told him, "Good job, son," Izuku said, and Hitoshi just hugged him back. This brought an idea to the sports festival as a whole, and it would soon be time for the internships. Third POV. Izuku was happy in all honesty. He had a loving girlfriend and now he had a soon-to-be adoptive son, which was honestly an entire family put together. Now only if Izuku could get rid of the people from his past since they are always being annoying, but Izuku knew he had to cut his losses at one point or another, and this seemed the best he was going to get out of the situation. Izuku, Stella, and Hitoshi all left the home early since Hitoshi would be transferring into 1A and was asked to report to the staff room before heading to the classroom since Aizawa walked to speak to him first. As such, that is how the three of them found themselves in the staff room watching as Aizawa offered to teach Hitoshi to use his capture gear since Aizawa thought it would be the perfect support gear for Hitoshi to use, which combined with the training that he did under Izuku would make him a powerful underground pro hero in the future if he kept his training up. Izuku nodded his head to Hitoshi when he looked at Izuku for approval. Since Hitoshi was Izuku's personal student first. After talking for a bit longer and watching the Yagis go into a state of shock after learning of Izuku adopting Hitoshi because Present Mike opened his mouth without realizing that the Yagis were in the room, the four of them headed off to 1. Izuku was going to be joining Aizawa for the day since he didn't want to go out on patrol today. As such, all four of them walked into 1A and the class went silent. The class had realized there was a new desk in the back of the room, but no one knew who it was for or why, but they got the hint now. Everyone, you remember Hitoshi Shinso, he will be joining 1A from now on, Aizawa stated, and they all broke out into questions except Ida, which Izuku noticed. Likely due to his brother being attacked and injured by Stain recently. Izuku thought but came out of his thoughts as Aizawa showed everyone how many internships offers they got. Hitoshi got none since he wasn't a hero student at the time for him to get any, and normally it takes longer. Stella received a large amount and had the top amount overall. She even got one from Endeavor, but Izuku and Stella both knew that Todoroki would likely be there, so she rejected it. Instead, Stella decided to go with a pro hero that specialized in rescue training since she wanted to get better in that regard. It was a rescue team named the Wild Pussycat. Izuku nodded at that pick and looked around at everyone else's picks. Izuku noticed that Ida had picked Hosu and he didn't like that fact and would bring it up to Aizawa later. As they were all talking about who they were going to pick, Hitoshi was just sitting there looking down a bit, but Izuku passed by and dropped a paper off on his desk, which was an offer to work under him for the internship time period. Hitoshi saw this and smirked and nodded his head. Soon lunch came around and Izuku stayed behind with Aizawa as Stella and Hitoshi went to lunch by themselves. "You need something?" Aizawa asked, and Izuku nodded his head as he took his mask off. "I think Ida is going to go after Stain and get ended due to his stupidity," Izuku stated, and Aizawa tensed at that statement and looked Izuku in the eyes. He chooses only one internship location, which is on Hosu. His brother just recently got attacked, and Stain still has at least 2 more people to attack in Hosu before he moves cities, Izuku stated, and Aizawa nodded his head. As it stands, without more direct proof, we can't actually stop him since he didn't request for any other place. We could get Manuel to reject it, which would go to his second choice, but he only picked Manuel, which makes that hard. As such, I can only warn Manuel to keep an eye on him, Aizawa stated, and Izuku nodded his head in understanding before thinking for a bit. "I will take Hitoshi with me to Hosu and keep watch. If I find Stain, then I will have Hitoshi stay away as I deal with him, but I will be following Ida around to ensure he doesn't do something stupid. I am also a good person to fight Stain since I got ranged combat abilities and the healing quirks," Izuku stated, and Aizawa considered it and nodded his head. Aizawa just warned Izuku to be careful, and Izuku would especially since he would be taking Hitoshi with him. As such, that is how the internship week started. Izuku luckily had about a week of time to start teaching Hitoshi some basic for Aizawa's scarf, and the man could teach him the rest later, but Izuku wanted Hitoshi to have some form of support gear or weapon when they went out during the internship, so he quickly repeated what they did for the 2 weeks of training and trained non-stop for an entire week since the internships were the following week after they came back from the short weekend break. Everyone else went on the buses to go to their internships, and Izuku saw Stella off to her internship before he looked at Hitoshi. "Okay, son. Let's get in the car and we are going to Hosu. Ida is going to do something stupid, so we need to keep his ass alive," Izuku stated bluntly, and Hitoshi just rolled his eyes. "I can see why Aizawa called 1A the problem children class," Hitoshi stated, and Izuku pointed out that he's a member of said class now. Hitoshi just rolled his eyes at that statement and ignored it, which just made Izuku shrug his shoulders. Soon the two of them arrived in Hosu and started off their patrol. Izuku had let Hitoshi deal with a handful of thugs but made sure to be close enough to deal with any threat that may present itself, as he also kept a small shadow hidden next to Hitoshi so he could have a quick attack if someone was already too close to his Hitoshi. Overall, Hitoshi was getting some decent training with the capture scarf as well, which made Izuku happy, and he knew that Hitoshi would be able to stand against most people in the class if he couldn't use his quirk, which was good. Then came the third day of the internship, and Izuku had kept a crow watching Ida the entire time he was outside on patrol, or even not on duty, and he was outside of his accommodations. Izuku was waiting for that moment where Ida would screw up and decided to take the law in his own hands and go after Stain to end him. The old saying went, "You ask and you shall receive," and it did just that. Izuku's crows sent memories to him as Hosu was now in flames as Nomus from the USJ were attacking, but from what he could see they were weaker. But what troubled Izuku was the fact that Ida had gone after Stain. The moment the city went up in flames, Ida bolted from his mentor the moment his attention was away. Ida did it. He bolted from his internship mentor and is hunting for Stain like an idiot. Izuku stated, and Hitoshi rolled his eyes and groaned. "I say he should get expelled for this since people like me try so hard to get in, but yet he goes and does shit like this," Hitoshi stated, and Izuku had to resist the urge of chuckling and agreeing since Izuku really did want to agree with that. Izuku took Hitoshi with him and they ran towards the direction that Ida had run off in. Izuku could teleport, but he didn't have much practice in teleporting with multiple people, and he also didn't want to just teleport into a fight with Hitoshi. As such, he just followed Ida from a distance via the crows since he hadn't found Stain yet. However, just as Izuku thought that he saw via the crows that Ida had found Stain in a back alley as he was about to end the pro-hero native. Damn idiot declared his intentions of ending Stain as well and didn't even notice the pro-hero on the ground. Izuku thought as they kept jumping. They were only a short distance away. "Hitoshi, if I have to teleport, then I want you to follow this crow to the destination. I can't let Ida die because of his stupid mistakes," Izuku stated, and Hitoshi nodded his head as he saw the crow fly in front of them. As they kept going, Hitoshi saw Izuku just disappear, and he knew that he had teleported to the fight since Ida was likely about to get ended, so he just followed the crow since they were only a short distance away. Izuku though had teleported right in front of Stain and blocked the blow from ending Ida. "Sir," Ida called out, and Izuku kicked Stain in the gut, forcing him back. "Can you move, Ida?" Izuku asked, and he responded no, but said that he should leave since it was hit fight. This caused Izuku to turn around and kick Ida right in the side, which caused him to scream in pain. "Shut the hell up, you idiot!" Izuku yelled as he turned back to Stain and got into a fighting position. "Ida, once we get done here, I am advocating for you to be demoted out of the hero course for this, just so you know. You had the guts to go after Stain when your brother would blame himself if you died, idiot," Izuku stated, and Ida's face widened in shock. Izuku then charged at Stain and kept fighting the man as Izuku talked. "Native, are you able to stand and escape with the student?" Izuku called out, and Native said he wasn't able to, which made Izuku curse under his breath. "Of FING course not," Izuku stated. Stain looked at Izuku and asked who he was. "I am the pro-hero hunter. I am an American pro-hero here on a special case but working out of UA right now for a short period of time. I'm assuming you won't let time take Native Nad the idiot student away from here without a fight, will you?" Izuku stated, and Stain nodded his head. "Indeed, they are fake heroes, but you seem like a good one. Are you a worthy hero like All Might?" Stain stated, and Izuku broke out into laughter. "Aha! All Might is a joke. You don't even know of the crimes he's committed that got covered up by the Hero Commission, and you think he's a worthy person," Izuku said as he questioned Stain's ideals. Stain got pissed and asked who the hell was he to know such things. "Who am I, you ask? I am sadly the stepson of All Might, who he neglected for years and allowed his biological daughter to bully physically, mentally, and with her quirk for years before I ran away. That is who I am, so I would know about how worthy that man truly is," Izuku stated, and everyone in the alley was shocked to silent with what they just learned. Then Stain heard his name called and was asked a question from above. "Stain, do you still think All Might is a true hero knowing that?" The voice asked, and Stain looked up and responded that he didn't know, but then he froze. Izuku looked at the voice and saw it was Hitoshi. "Good job, Siren. Order him to remove all weapons he has and toss them on the ground in front of him, Izuku said, and Hitoshi did that. Soon Stain was defenseless and Izuku wrapped shadows around him which knocked him out of the quirk, and he was pissed. It's over, Stain. You've been beaten by my intern. You will justice for your crimes, Izuku stated as Hitoshi placed quirk-canceling cuffs on him. Izuku then had Hitoshi call the police to report their location and request medical care. Soon, they were all in the hospital as Ida and Native had to be taken to get cared for. Izuku though wanted the book thrown at Ida for his stupid actions, but he made a stop at the older brother's room and healed him. Tensei Ida was shocked when he got healed and asked who Izuku was, and he just said a simple pro-hero. By the way, if you haven't been told, your brother decided to hunt Stain down and almost died tonight. He's her in the hospital and I want the book thrown at him in all honesty because he decided to go be a vigilante, Izuku said, and Tensei paled and asked how he was. Light wounds since I arrived before he got ended and saved him. Again, I would like him fully punished and kicked out of the hero course in all honesty, but I am a salty guy when it comes to people like your brother and their stupidity, Izuku said, and Tensei nodded his head and asked for help getting to the room since his legs were still adjusting to being healed. Izuku helped him and soon they were at the room where they found the police chief who was chewing Ida out but was also chewing Hitoshi out for using his quirk since he didn't have a hero. Oh hell no, he ain't chewing my kid out, Izuku thought. Excuse me, but what the hell do you think you're doing chewing Hitoshi out? Izuku asked, and the chief looked at him and asked who he was. I am pro-hero hunter, and again I ask why you are chewing him out? Izuku asked with a darker tone. He had no right to use his quirk and we are considering charging them both with vigilantism, stated the chief, and you could hear Hitoshi say under his breath that it was the wrong thing to say, which the chief heard and looked at him but didn't notice Izuku's getting angry. Oh hell no. You can go after the Ida brat since he indeed was a vigilante in his actions, but Hitoshi had permission from me, who is his internship mentor, to use his quirk. Second, want me to destroy your career and render you to a parking maid for the rest of your miserable life, chief, Izuku stated, and the chief got pissed and stepped up to Izuku. Are you threatening an officer? I want to see your hero license now, the chief stated, and Izuku grinned under his mask and handed his special agent license out, and the chief paled when he read it. So, I am asking again. Want me to ruin your career, chief? You have a lot of balls going after my intern for what I gave him permission for with me present when he did it, which is 100% legal. So again, chief, are you sure you want two of Intango? Because I am sure I will walk away from this untouched, but are you? Izuku stated as he yelled the last part and got really damn close to the chief's face since the chief was really getting on his nerves. The chief took a step back and bowed his head in apology and said he was sorry for accusing his intern. Everyone was shocked at how quickly the chief turned tail on the situation when he saw the license, and the others were wondering what he saw on the license. Ida and Hitoshi knew he was a special agent, but they never really grasped how much power they have until this moment. Sir, may I ask about the Ida kid then? Was he given permission from Manuel or you? The chief asks, and Izuku said he knew nothing of him getting permission and then looked at Manuel, who said he didn't receive permission. The chief looked at Ida and glanced to the special agent next to him. Kid, I am recommending UA to deal with you and not take this to a legal matter. Though they will likely kick you out of the hero course for this, but this is your only warning for this type of thing, the chief stated, and walked out of the door. Tensei though wasn't done with his brother as he used the crutches and walked to his brother and smacked him. Ida was in shock at seeing his brother up and moving and had questions that Tensei refused to answer since Izuku had asked him not to talk about. Third POV. The internship week came to an end and the news broke that the pro-hero hunter and his UA intern Siren had successfully captured Stain during the Hosu attacks since they discovered his location while he was fighting the pro-hero native and another UA intern which went unnamed. The public was wondering who this pro-hero hunter was, but there wasn't much available information about them out in the public. The only things that they knew were that the hero was on the younger side and younger than Hawks, that he temporarily worked at UA due to a high-profile case, and that the pro-hero was actually from America who was working in Japan for the foreseeable future. That is the information that Izuku purposely leaked out to the public so that they would have some sort of information about him and not create too many crazy theories about him. However, outside of that topic, Izuku and Hitoshi had spent the remaining time of the internship training and looking into the League of Villains. Izuku knew it was a risk to involve someone so inexperienced on the case, but Hitoshi's quirk made getting information out of villains so much easier and quicker than Izuku actually copied the quirk since he found it so useful. As such, both of them worked through the villains that they got and interrogated them quickly, and had actually gained some information about the League of Villains. Izuku was able to pin the location down to roughly in the prefectures surrounding the Tokyo area, which wasn't good in Izuku's opinion since they were highly dense, which meant a lot of places to look in to try and find them. They also still had to find the location of the doctor, but at least they had more accurate information. Izuku ended up reporting the new information to the UN and American Commission, and they were pleased with the speed of the search and were happy that Izuku was starting to single in on areas that the main league base was at, but they wished they could find the actual location of the doctor since he was the biggest threat. Soon though it was time to return to UA, and Izuku kinda was looking forward to the staff meeting about Ida since Izuku just wanted the kid kicked out of the hero course for pulling the shit he did. Though, Izuku expected All Might and Green Tornado to advocate for a light punishment, which Izuku would find annoying since it was just another display of people with powerful quirks getting away with their crimes. As such, that is how Izuku found himself in the staff meeting room with the entire first-year teaching staff, and the topic of discussion was one Tenya Ida. Nizu was reading the report from the police out loud so everyone could hear it, and then they would talk about what they want to do with the student in question. So from the report we can gather that Ida went after Stain for revenge but ended up failing and needed to be saved, which our resident pro-hero hunter did with his intern. Now, we need to discuss what we shall do with Mr. Ida since the police chief of Hosu has referred his punishments to us and won't charge the boy with vigilantism with this event since they could ever it due to Izuku and his intern Hitoshi defeating Stain, and they only mentioned Ida as another intern that had gotten attacked alongside the pro-hero native. Nizu stated, and everyone was silent, and as Izuku predicted, All Might spoke up and talked about being lenient due to the emotional state that the boy was in, which drove his actions. Some of the staff nodded their heads at All Might's statement and talked about how they should have persuaded the boy from going and doing it, which just made Izuku roll his eyes at their statement since he had told Aizawa about Ida's likely actions, so Yue knew about it and decided not to prevent it. As they were all talking, Izuku decided to speak up. In honesty, the kid should be removed from the hero course. UA's already lowered its standards this year, and allowing him to stay in the hero course just means you're lowering your standards even more. Izuku stated, and the room went quiet at Izuku's insult to UA, which he didn't hold back on. What do you mean lower our standards? UA hasn't done that. All Might spoke up and Izuku smirked. It has. UA has a zero-tolerance bullying policy which is meaningless and worthless now since UA accepted 3 known extreme bullies. Now you are advocating that UA allows an attempted murderer to stay in the hero course because that is what this is in the simplest terms. Tenya Ida went to Hosu and knowingly was going to try and end Stain in retaliation for Stain's attack on his brother that previously had left him crippled. So it would indeed be lowering UA's standards once again, at least in my view. Izuku stated, and the room was in silence after Izuku's words. Inko decided to speak up and ask if this was about Izumi, Katsuki, and Shoto being in UA, and Izuku shook his head and said it was just a progression of UA lowering his standard that he was pointing out. UA is currently starting to walk on a path of showing that if you have a powerful quirk or powerful connections then you get away scot-free of any meaningful punishments for your crimes. Izuku stated, and Aizawa nodded his head, but in all honesty, the man didn't want to kick the boy out of his class. He decided to speak up. I have to agree with Izuku, but I also don't want to kick Ida out of my class at this time since his actions were stopped. Izuku had warned me beforehand about Ida likely doing this, and I should have done more to stop him, which I didn't since I didn't think of a way to do it outside of having his internship reject his request, which he only requested one. I should have forced him to go somewhere else in all honesty, but I didn't, so I think I share some of the blame for this. Aizawa stated, and the room was silent before he started to talk again. Izuku is right in the fact that UA needs to hand out a punishment that has actual meaning to it. So this is what I promise moving forward for Ida. 1. He won't be allowed to take the provisional exam until we are sure he won't make a repeat of this since we are considering giving them it next semester. 2. He will be on probation for the rest of this semester. 3. He will be required to attend therapy with Hound Dog until he's approved to stop. 4. He will be required to write a paper on the impacts of vigilantism in our society. 5. He will be required to receive a mark on his license indicating he had committed a violation of hero laws which won't directly state what he did but it will still be there in the future. 6. He will be required to give up his seat as president of the class. And 7th, he will be required to serve dentations for every other day so M/W/F for the rest of the semester where he will be used as a pack mule for the staff or clean up the support department. Aizawa stated and the staff thought it over and Izuku spoke up saying that he would be satisfied with that punishment since it penalized him heavily for his actions and put him at risk of losing his hero core spot if he stepped out of line by even an inch. The rest of the staff quickly agreed as well since it was a good dose of punishment and they also were starting to agree with Izuku that they indeed did lower their standards if they let him off too easily. All Might and Green Tornado kept their mouths shut since it was clear that they were outvoted and the punishment was already done and over with. Soon they moved on topic and Izuku updated them all with the information that he and Hitoshi had gathered during their internship while looking for the League of Villains. Nizu nodded his head and started to change his searching for the League bases to those areas only as they just kept closing the circle to be shorter and shorter. The next topic after that was what to do for the final exams since they needed to start planning for it. Have them fight teachers, Izuku stated and everyone looked at him. With the increase in threats, it would be better for the first years to actually have a bit more combat experience so have them fight the teachers. Have teachers wear heavy weights or something to slow them down and pair 2 students against 1 teacher and then a team of 3 for the last team due to the uneven numbers. Izuku stated and before anyone could say anything Nizu agreed with the idea right away and accepted it. Let's do it. Power Loader have the support department to make weights to work for the exams and we need to figure out the team placements for the exam before it's time for the exam and then we have an exam made. Good job everyone. Staff meeting dismissed. Nizu stated and walked out the door leaving everyone confused but Izuku just rolled his eyes. Izuku knew it was because he didn't want objections because he wanted to fight some students and torment them for a bit. Third POV. Let it be known that Izuku is a petty beach when it comes to getting revenge on people. It's been known by those close to him and others quickly learn of it. So when Izuku was in a staff meeting listening to how the students would be paired up and against who, it got decided that Izuku would be fighting Yagi, Todoroki, and Bakugo. All Might and Green Tornado tried to object to it since Izuku just had this wicked smile on his face that promised pain and suffering the entire time for those 3 individuals but Nizu didn't want to hear objections to it and had approved Aizawa's proposal. It was also decided that Stella and Hitoshi would be fighting All Might which earned a laugh out of Izuku who turned to All Might and told him not to die too easily which just scared the shit out of the teachers since they were all wondering how powerful Izuku's girlfriend and now adoptive son were. Oh, on a side note, the adoption of Hitoshi had gone through and he was not Hisashi Midoriya but they haven't told the class yet of the change since Hitoshi wanted to tease people about it. Not even the Yagi adults have figured out about the adoption since they weren't there for the announcement that day in the staff room. Anyway, there was some time before the final exams so Izuku decided to increase Hitoshi's training since he was getting far better with the capture scarf from the training Aizawa and Izuku have been putting him through. Izuku though was starting to teach Hitoshi some other support gear as well such as throwing knives that were laced with sleeping drugs on them that would help put villains and his enemies to sleep. He did have some knives that were not laced with sleeping drugs as well to use for regular things or close combat if he needed to. As such, Hitoshi was becoming a more and more powerful hero in training and they have also gotten him a mouthguard with a voice changer in it that still allowed his quirk to work which meant he could disguise his voice and trick other people who would be trying to avoid answering his voice. Soon the time passed and now it was time for the final exams. Izuku was smiling like crazy when it finally came around and Stella only told Izuku to not end them which he rolled his eyes at until he got a glare from Stella which he raised his hands in defeat at. Whipped. Hitoshi stated and Izuku just looked at him for a moment before speaking. I don't see you disobeying her either now do I? Izuku asked and Hitoshi looked at him before smirking. But I am the son, I am meant to be respectful to my parents so it's not me being whipped now is it? Hitoshi said before walking away leaving Izuku dumbfounded and feeling like he needed to smack his forehead in disbelief at his cheeky son. Anyway, Soon the three members of the family arrive at UA for the day's final exams, and it went about as you can expect it to. Stella and Hitoshi fought All Might in the first round, and let us say All Might has a new scar from Stella's fire across his chest from the burns. All Might decided to open his mouth and made a comment about something stupid like they would need more than a fire and mental quirk to take him on, which proved that they didn't need more than that since All Might was dumb. Hitoshi had used his voice changer to change his voice to Izumi Yagi's voice, and let's say All Might was stupid enough to answer, which allowed Stella to blast him with a large fire attack. Of course, they could have won by just putting the cuffs on him at that moment, but where is the fun in that? When All Might was broken out of the mind quirk, he looked at his wounds and saw the massive burn across his chest from Stella, who was floating in the air with her wings of fire, and he got up and did a punch of air, but Stella just tanked the entire punch of air with her only being pushed back. All Might and everyone in the control room was shocked since the punch was strong enough to cause it to rain. How strong is she? Some students asked, and Izuku only laughed at the question, which earned him looks. She's strong enough to fight me for a good portion of time, and my father and I can both wipe the floor with All Might easily, Izuku stated, and Yagi, Todoroki, and Bakugo were shocked at what they learned and wondered who the hell Izuku's biological father was. Then they heard a crash and looked back at the screens to see a dust cloud. All Might was in a crater with a capture gear around his neck choking him out, and Stella holding All Might's arms down with fire that was burning him slightly as she learned how to control the temperature of the flames. Recovery Girl saw signs of him losing his form and stepped in and called the match. All Might loses due to health concerns. This decision is called by Recovery Girl as the head of medical for UA. She stated over the intercom, and everyone except Izuku was stunned at the result. Even Nizu was shocked a bit at the result of how badly All Might lost, because halfway through the fight, Stella had targeted the weights and broke them off. All Might was fighting half of the time at full ability, though he didn't use 100% of One for All. He was fighting like he would any other day, and that said a lot of the two abilities. Soon it was time for the 3 versus 1 match. Izuku made his way out to the field, and he long had crows in the sky flying before the match even started. Izuku sat down right in the center of the fake city and didn't move. He had the crows flying in the air and just viewed from them. No one except him knew that he could control the shadows from a distance, and it only required a visual on the shadows and the area, which meant he didn't even need to move due to having the crows. Izuku heard the buzzer and announcement that the 3 had entered the city. He had a crow find them and smirked, which confused everyone in the control room. Even Stella was confused since she hasn't seen him just sit down and do nothing. However, they were all shocked when an explosion of shadows happened right next to the 3 students and tossed them into the side of a building. They then all looked at Izuku where he was and saw he had his eyes closed and his hands out forward with shadows moving around his hands. Is he really able to attack from that far of a distance? Asked one of the teachers, since they never knew he could do that. The students and staff just watched in shock at how Izuku was fighting, and even All Might, who was hidden in the medical tents in his skinny form, were in shock at what he was watching. The 3 children kept pushing forward, but no matter what they tried or did, they couldn't even move past 2 blocks worth of distance in the fake city. Nizu was thinking the test over and realized that the 3 students had 0 chance of winning, which wasn't meant to happen. They were meant to have some form of a chance of winning via running away, so he went on the intercom and asked Izuku to decrease his strength since they needed some chance at winning. Izuku just rolled his eyes and head a bit and shrugged. They could hear him via a mic on a drone near him as he spoke. Fine, I'll give them a chance. Can they hear me? Izuku asked, and Nizu turned Izuku's audio from the drone to the entire city. They can now, Nizu said, and Izuku nodded his head as he stood up. Test's going to change a bit. Instead of fighting me, you will fight one of my shadow clones. I only put 5% of my power into these clones, so you have a better shot at defeating them, and they can't control the shadows from a distance like I have been doing, so it will have to do more close combat with limited range combat. I will be exiting the ring though, so if you can destroy my clone, it will count as a win as well. Izuku stated as he made the clone and made wings on his back of shadows and flew out of the city. Everyone was in shock, but Nizu allowed it and contained the exam. The 3 students felt ashamed of themselves that they couldn't even take Izuku on since he didn't even move an inch from his starting spot. Soon they encountered the shadow clone and the fight started. Bakugo tried to blow the clone up since they were allowed to destroy it, but it just dodged the attacks and teleported via the shadows nearby to dodge the attacks. Everyone was shocked at how well the shadow clone was fighting since it was only 5% of Izuku's overall power, and that was terrifying. Soon, the entire time lapsed for their exams and it was called. They had failed to even touch the shadow clone with 3 of them, and it was a far weaker version of Izuku. That just showed his overwhelming power and how much distance was between them. Izuku though was just smirking as he enjoyed tormenting them with overwhelming power. Stella though was in shock since Izuku had never shown that overwhelming power when fighting her, and she asked him and everyone turned to him. Of course I wouldn't. I love you, so I never taught to crush your spirit. They on the other hand I don't give 2 shits for, so if I crush their spirits it entertains me. Izuku stated, and they all shuddered to that except Stella and Hitoshi. So sadistic tendencies run in our family now? I'm glad I got adopted by an awesome father. Hitoshi stated, and everyone turned to him in confusion except most of the staff since they knew. Well, All Might in Green Tornado didn't. Izumi Yagi, who was in shock, asked what he was talking about. Hitoshi turned to her with a wicked grin and started talking. I guess it was going to come out sooner or later. Didn't think I would be the one to spoil it, but Izuku adopted me as his son. I am Hisashi Midoriya now, and whenever Stella marries him she becomes my mother as well, but I already call them mom and dad since they care for me like that already. Hitoshi said as he drank some of his coffee that Izuku pulled out of his shadows from Hitoshi, and everyone turned to Izuku looking at him. Izuku just shrugged his shoulders a bit. What? He's a chaotic germline like me, so I wanted him, so I took him. Threw his foster parents in jail for the crimes they committed and pressured the government to give his custody to me as a foster parent, and one thing lead to another and I adopted him as my son. Stella's taken the mother role quite well as well, but our family has never been traditional from the start. As such, please call him Midoriya from now on. Izuku stated with a big-ass grin, and everyone shuddered at it. All Might, Green Tornado, and Izumi Yagi were confused about how to feel in learning this news. Nizu though jumped in at the silence and called the exams to an end and said everyone was free to go. Izuku, Hitoshi, and Stella all walked away and left the room that was still stunned behind. Third POV. Izuku was currently laying in bed, but he wasn't having the best of times. As somehow he found himself in a dark void. Izuku was standing up, which he found odd at how sensational this so-called dream felt to him. It was as if he was awake and feeling everything, but he knew he was asleep due to one of his quirks that he copied from a villain that allowed him to get status updates of his body's condition and health, so he would know if he had anything wrong with him due to the pain negation quirk he had, and his quirk was telling him he was asleep but in some sort of weird mental state currently that it couldn't figure out. Izuku moved around and soon found other things in the void. He came upon a city that was in ruins. He looked around more and he just kept finding more and more ruins until he saw them. He saw what he believed to be the past users of One for All and Izumi Yagi. Oh God, please don't tell me I somehow got sucked into One for All. That is a nightmare if she starts appearing in my head. Izuku thought as he moved closer to them to see if he could hear what they were talking about. As he got closer he started to hear them talking, and Izumi was asking them why she couldn't use One for All correctly, and they looked at her, and what Izuku thought was the first user, aka his uncle, spoke up. Izumi Yagi, daughter of the 8th user and grandchild of the 7th user, you should know why we won't allow you to use the quirk correctly. You have committed a series of actions in your past that we can't stomach. I still can't believe 8th still handed you the quirk knowing what you have done to your brother. Stated the first user as he spoke with a frown on his face. Nana Shimura spoke up next. Izumi, we saw all of your memories when you received the quirk like we do whenever we enter a new user and are cut off from the previous user. We still maintain a connection to him, but we don't see any of his recent memories anymore since we won't get a copy of him until he passes away and an echo joins us in the quirk. But with everything we know since you received the quirk, we can say that you started your actions with twisted thoughts that lead to this result. So can you really say you are worth to wield the quirk when even your father has committed crimes? I find disappointing. Nana stated as she looked at her granddaughter. It was true that Nana gave her children up, but she didn't neglect them or allow them to abuse each other. She gave them up in fear of All for One finding them and harming them, but All Might chose to have children and still neglected One because one child was quirkless, which All Might was. The fun fact that Izuku just realized was that the previous users based on their words had no idea Izuku was All for One's son. Izuku had ordered All Might and Green Tornado using his special agent privileges to not reveal the information about him being the son of All for One, which meant Izumi didn't know, nor did the past users. At best, the past users knew he wasn't All Might's biological son, but not what his true quirk was or whose son he was, which made him smirk. Izuku listened in as they all kept talking for a bit longer, as Izumi declared that she wanted to be better and to one day reconnect with her brother if he will forgive her for the actions that happened, which made Izuku roll his eyes. Like, I would do it that easily, but I don't agree with them allowing you to be injured using the quirk. Izuku thought as he's seen the damage the quirk has caused. She's gained some control over it via a full cowl mode, but it had its negative effects as well, and she could only maintain it for a minute or so before the control snapped, and he knew it was due to the past users. As such, Izuku hated what he was going to do. He really hated it, but the memories from before he turned 4 were still in the far back of his mind, and he hated how he couldn't shove her completely out of his existence even though he really effing wanted to. As the past users started talking about how the quirk was meant to fight evil, a great evil, and that it was rearing its head, they still didn't believe she should be the one wielding the quirk for that fight. This made Izuku chuckle inside, as they still didn't know his father had quit his evil schemes and the ones causing the destruction with the Nomus, which they were referring to since it had multiple quirks, wasn't from his father. It was at that point that Izuku decided to get involved, as he walked over and threw his arm around his uncle's shoulder. Everyone tensed when he made his appearance, and some of the past users freaked out and jumped away from him since they had no idea how Izuku got there. Nana then recognized Izuku from the memories they have seen. "You're Izuku, my grandson," Nana shouted out, and everyone calmed down at that, but were still confused about how he got inside the quirk, and Izumi was in shock at seeing her brother. "Onyi-han?" she called out, and Izuku glared at her and she flinched back at his glare. The first user looked at Izuku and he felt off. "The more I look at you, the more you seem familiar without taking into account of seeing you via the memories. Why is that?" the first user asked, and Izuku started to laugh at that. "Oh, I would hope so, since I do take some looks from my father as I've grown up, wouldn't you say, uncle?" Izuku stated to the first user, whose eyes widened in shock, and he came up to Izuku and touched his face and examined it. "My brother had a family?" he stated, and the other users were in shock and freaked out again, while Nana was on the floor in shock since she realized that meant her daughter had gotten with the person that ended her. She felt disgusted and looked at Izuku and didn't know how to feel in regards to him, which Izuku could see. Indeed he did. He did give up being the world's #1 villain after all when he had me, but All Might screwed that up and almost ended him when he was walking home with the milk to feed me. Though, I would later come into the hands of my father years later, after years of neglect and abuse at the hands of your 8th user and 9th user. Ironic, wouldn't you say, that the villain of the story became the hero of the story while the heroes became the villains? Izuku stated as he used his shadow quirk that he had access to and created a chair and sat down on it. The past users were in shock at what they just learned, and Izumi was confused, which Izuku noticed. "Yagi, you looked confused? Did no one ever tell you the story of One for All?" Izuku asked her, and she nodded her head and explained what she knew, which was on the One for All side of the story, and he rolled his eyes. Of course, All Might would give his daughter a legacy filled with blood and death and not tell the entire story. "The damn FING idiot," Izuku stated, and then told Izumi the entire story, which included All for One, and Izumi made the connection. So you are telling me your biological father is All for One, and our fathers have tried to end each other, and yours ended every past user? Izumi Yagi asked, and Izuku nodded his head. "Also, there is the fact that I have All for One as well, but an advanced version, but my old man took it from me at birth, so I didn't end myself with it since it activated after I was born. He never got a chance to return it until we reunited, since All Might aka your dad attempted to murder him after he gave up the villain world," Izuku stated, and Izumi and the past users were in shock to learn he had All for One. As they sat there, Izuku looked at her, and God, he hated the past memories from before he was 4, since they were driving him to make a decision which he hated doing since he didn't want to help her. "Uncle!" Izuku called out, and his uncle came over to him and looked at him. "Give her the ability to control One for All without you all blocking it." You are all acting no better than she was when she harmed me, so get off your high horses since you are allowing her to be harmed by the quirk. If you didn't want her as a wielder, then you would have rejected the transfer, since I can feel you had the capability from what I'm sensing from One for All right now. Izuku stated, and Izumu and the past user's eyes widened at his request, and his uncle asked why he would do that. Izuku rolled his eyes and looked at his sister. I don't know. My memories of the stupid girl from before I was 4 keep bugging me as you all talk down to her. And ironic that I'm helping my abuser. Effie fantastic. Izuku stated as he rolled his eyes and shrugged. Izumi's eyes widened as tears fell from her eyes, which earned a scoff from Izuku. Oh, don't go crying now, since this doesn't mean I forgive you or anything. I still hate your guts and believe you shouldn't have been accepted into the hero course. Do know that I've advocated for you all to be removed several times already and won't hide my dislike for you 3, but that doesn't mean I will stand for you being harmed just because people are on high horses. Izuku stated, and Izumi Yagi nodded her head, and his uncle just watched this entire scene play out in front of him. Maybe he is telling the truth of my brother stopping his evil schemes. Thought the first user. Izuku though looked at the past users before sighing. Listen up, since you are only hearing this once. My father would like to express his apologies to you all for, well, ending you all off. Grandmother, he didn't know Inko was your daughter since she got adopted by another family, if you are wondering if he planned that. He only learned later on after they separated, since Inko decided to get it on with All Might not even a few months after my father's sudden disappearance. Though I am wondering how she became such a neglect piece of crap when I was quirkless. I've never understood that, nor did father understand how she did such a change from when he was with her. Izuku stated, and Nana was still disturbed to hear of All for One being with her daughter, but put it aside as she told Izuku she didn't know how either. Izumi kept quiet since she knew better to talk right now and try to defend her mother, since she had to admit that it wasn't right of her family to do what they did to Izuku. Anyone wants to tell me why I am here anyway? I was enjoying a comfortable sleep with my lover when I found myself here. Izuku stated, and they were all confused as well as why he was there. They all shrugged, and he shook his head before remembering that the past users were speaking about another thing that he wanted to correct. Oh yeah, about those Nomus. We know who it is that is creating them, and it's not my father. It's a doctor that has a quirk that has allowed him to live over a century. He did work for my dad at one point before I was born as well, so that's how we knew to search for him, but we did confirm it's him from other sources. Yagi, you are not allowed to talk about my quirk, my father, or the case I am here in Japan on to anyone. If you need to talk to someone, go to Nizu, your parents, or I hate to say it but me, you don't come to me unless it's important. Izuku stated as he shuddered at having to deal with her outside of the damn One for All quirk, and she nodded her head and lowered her head since he didn't want to talk to her outside of the quirk. Soon though they saw both of the children starting to disappear, and Yagin in her idiotic self was freaking out as Izuku rolled his eyes. It seems we are waking up, idiot. Calm down. Izuku yelled at her, and she lowers her head again and nodded her head, though she was sure she heard him mutter another line that sounded like him wishing her a good day, though she thought she was crazy when she heard that, but in truth, Izuku did say it, but he was pissed and shocked with himself after he said it, since the damn memories from before the age of 4 kept pissing him off. However, he found himself awake via Stella shaking him. She looked concerned as he looked at her and asked her what was wrong. She explained that he had green lighting around him that looked familiar to how One for All looked around Yagi, and that shocked him as he looked at his copied quirks and cursed himself as he found a copy of One for All. When the hell did I copy One for All? Izuku said in a pissed tone, and Stella just calmed him down so they could think. As they were getting dressed and made their way to the living room and dining room, Stella presented a theory. What if due to the fact that One for All started with your father and uncle, that your quirk and it synced themselves and allowed yours to copy One for All without your knowledge, since you are the blood of the people who started it and your quirk automatically called out to it? Stella proposed, and Izuku just thought it over and shrugged, since it was the only theory that made sense to him currently, since there was nothing that else to go on, but he was still pissed he had it, and he was pissed at his last statement to Yagi in the dreamscape as he explained everything that happened to Stella and Hitoshi. They gave their viewpoints on the subject, and Izuku would just think on it for now since he had to admit that they were right in him remembering the fond times before it all turned sour and that his mind in the dreamscape was likely reacting to seeing her being looked down upon, that the old brotherly instincts that he had cast away made an appearance. This was due to how Izuku has been fatherly to Hitoshi, and Izuku had to admit they were likely right in that fact that his fatherly aspects towards his adoptive son made his brotherly protectiveness come back out, since Izuku would always protect her before their quirks came in. Though, it didn't mean that Izuku liked it at all, since and honestly it pissed him the hell off. Third POV. Izuku Midoriya knew things would go wrong. He advocated that the summer training camp be moved onto the UA campus instead of going so far from help. However, he was outvoted in his opinion on the matter, since All Might and Green Tornado had convinced several others that being isolated would help keep the students safe, since the League would not know of the location, which Izuku saw as completely illogical. Izuku left the meeting with a warning to All Might. If my son or my lover Stella comes to harm because you all stupidly made the decision to hold the summer training camp so far away from help, then I will be holding those that voted for it to be held like that responsible. I will also publicly hold All Might and Green Tornado responsible, since they are the ones that convinced some of the others to vote to allow this stupid decision. Izuku stated as he got up and left the meeting in anger. Aizawa himself also agreed that the camp shouldn't be held so far away, but he was outvoted as well. Niza did not vote since he needed to be impartial on the matter, but he thought it was a good idea to send them to the camp since they had changed the location, so the League shouldn't know of the location. Oh, how wrong they were, and Izuku was pissed. Izuku luckily had made sure several crows were in the area, but he was pushing it in the distance department since he was so far away from the crows. He's honestly never tested if he could teleport that far with his quirks, and it also consumed stamina, so it was a risk that he might not have enough to make the jump. As the days went by and the second day of the training trip had arrived, Izuku did not feel good. It was as if he had an ill feeling about the trip, but he knew that UA wouldn't do anything about it, so he decided to call the UN and see if they had any other special agents in Japan currently, and there was no luck. He was the only agent, and they asked why, and he explained the camp trip and how he felt it was a horrible idea and that he was feeling like something was going to happen. They understood and said to just head in the direction of the camp now and be prepared for it and waste his time instead of not being there. As such, Izuku headed towards the camp by driving to save energy. However, halfway into the drive, he saw it happened. The forest was on fire, and he pulled his phone out and texted the UN and alerted them that the camp was under attack and to alert any heroes they could to get to it. He then teleported, and he luckily made it, but he was exhausted from the jump. So I made it to the camp, but I was half the distance I had from earlier today, so it's a good thing I traveled so close. Izuku thought as he ran into the forest. He prayed that he wouldn't be too late, and God, he was wrong, as he heard a scream from a portion of the forest and headed towards it. The trees made it hard to teleport due to them covering everything, so he had to travel by land and teleport to what he saw directly in front of him, and when he arrived he saw it. He saw a burned man pulling a student close to his chest as sludge came out of his mouth and started to teleport them. Izuku recognized the student, and it was none other than Hitoshi. Izuku's blood boiled and blasted off from where he was and used his shadow's whips and grabbed Hitoshi just in the nick of time and pulled him away. The attacker was gone though, but Izuku only cared about getting his son back. He looked Hitoshi over and saw he was mostly okay and asked what happened at the camp, and Hitoshi filled him in on the details and what happened. Then Izuku felt a hand on his shoulder, and it was Stella, which made Izuku happier. Izuku guided them and some other students that were at the site back to the camp. They did not encounter any more villains, but when they arrived back at the camp they found out that Bakugo had been taken since he was a bit too aggressive during the sports final, according to one villain who had gotten captured and had fallen under Hitoshi's quirk, which provided them a load of information. The police were questioning why a student was still using his quirk, but Izuku showed his license and they shut up at the sight of a special agent, and Izuku just had Hitoshi keep interrogating the villain under his control, and they soon learned the location of the bar and a Nomu factory. Though they had some ideas that there was a secondary Nomu factory outside of the one known by the villain, which annoyed Izuku. Soon, they had all other students and staff accounted for. Izuku looked at Aizawa and Vlad King before speaking. I told you all this was a stupid idea, and if I didn't arrive when I did, my son would be in their hands as well since he was almost captured. After this is over I am holding All Might, Green Tornado, and most likely UA itself responsible for this. I don't care if the school gets shut down since I can just transfer Stella and Hitoshi to another school. Izuku stated as he walked by them and ensured his family got on the bus. He was downright pissed with All Might and Green Tornado since he warned that this camp was a bad idea to hold away from the campus. After the students were driven away in the buses, Izuku pulled his phone out and called Nizu. "Hello, Izuku," Nizu said, and Izuku knew from the tone he was accepting this call. "We have the location of the League's bar and a Nomu factory. Prepare a damn raid team because we need to end this. We know there is also another location for Nomus, but we don't know the location currently until we get a hold of the doctor or his notes." Izuku stated, and Nizu said, "Okay," and waited to see if Izuku had anything to say. "I feel like you're waiting for me to yell. Don't worry, that will come when I hold All Might, Green Tornado, and UA publicly responsible for this, but that can wait until after we get Bakugo back and end the league," Izuku said as he hung the phone up and teleported back to his car after he sleeps a quick 30 minutes for his power nap to work. Once he was in his car he drove back to UA and his anger only increased as time went by. After he arrived at UA, he looked around and could already see reporters outside of UA gates. He walked towards them and then pushed through them. They asked who he was and he stated Pro Hero Hunter, and they remembered him from the Stain event. They asked him for his views and Izuku said he would provide his views after they figure out where the missing student is located, since they already knew about that from the police chatter, so he didn't bother keeping it hidden. They let him pass and he made it inside the school but pulled his phone out once it vibrated. He received a text from Stella telling him how she and Hitoshi was, and he thanked her for the update and said he was at UA getting ready for the meetings that would happen. After he walked into the meeting room, everyone felt as if the temperature dropped several degrees. All Might tensed up at Izuku's presence and Izuku just kept silent and sat down near his uncle in hopes that he would keep him calm if he decided to attack All Might. After about half an hour the room was filled with pro heroes, police, and other workers planning the raid. Nizu talked about the information that was gathered via a student's quirk and the locations they gained. Endeavor spoke up and asked what the plan was. Nizu stated that a raid team would be sent to the bar where they believed Bakugo to be located at, and then other heroes would go to the Nomu factory. Though they all noticed Izuku wasn't set to any place, as Nizu informed them that Izuku would be acting as he saw fit due to him being a special agent. Soon they finalized the plans for what the raid would be like, and Izuku received distributing news from Stella. Yagi was leading Todoroki, and some others from the class wanted to go attempt a rescue of Bakugo since they didn't think the heroes were moving fast enough, which Izuku rolled his eyes at since it hasn't even been a full day and the raid would happen at night, which meant they would be aiming to get him back within a 2-day time frame. Izuku authorized Hitoshi to use his quirk to keep them locked down at the school until someone from UA arrived to detain them. As the room cleared of only UA staff, Izuku spoke up. "Well, that is effing lovely," Izuku stated out loud, which caught their attention. "What happened?" Aizawa asked, concerned something major happened. After this is done, Yagi should be removed from the hero course since she wants to lead Todoroki and her classmates to commit vigilantism. Izuku stated, and All Might said that couldn't be true. "Oh, it is. Stella just warned me that the 1A class idiots are planning an attempt to vigilantism to try and save Bakugo since they don't think the heroes are moving fast enough. I authorized Hitoshi to use his quirk to detain them, so someone from UA needs to go officially detain them for attempting vigilantism, because if I go I'm going to yell at them for being idiots and won't be kind in my words since this is a repeat of Ida. Dear God, what is wrong with your class, Uncle Aizawa, because it seems the stupidity from Ida has spread to more of your students," Izuku stated, and Aizawa just cursed under his breath while All Might and Green Tornado looked down in shame. Aizawa said he would go get them since they were his students, and Izuku nodded his head. Third POV. As Stella, Hitoshi, and all of their classmates from 1A and 1B were transported to the hospital, Stella had sent Izuku a text to alert him of their conditions and that they were already in the hospital. Izuku had sent her a message thanking her and that he would be entering a meeting about reducing Bakugo and that he would talk to them later. Stella alerted Hitoshi of Izuku's location and he thanked her as they just sat in silence in their room together and enjoyed each other's company. Then Hitoshi spoke up, Is it bad that I am kind of laughing in a dark part of my mind that Bakugo was the person that got kidnapped and Dad saved me in time? Like, due to how he and the other two treated him, I just see it as dark karma retribution finally happening to them. Hitoshi asked, and Stella was silent for a few moments before speaking. It's not wrong, I wouldn't say it in front of the others since they don't know everything about their past, so they would see it as you being cruel. Even then, they are not as attached to Izuku as we are and would still find it a bit effed up, but I kind of have similar thoughts that I am glad you didn't get taken. Stella stated and rubbed Hitoshi's back as they sat there. After turning on the TV and watching some of the news reports about what was going on, it had been several hours when they heard a knock on their door. Surprise, it was the classmates from 1. Stella was confused about why they had come to them, and it seems Kirishima had become really close with Bakugo even though he didn't know about what Bakugo's done. Stella found it ironic that someone so against bullying would become friends with 3 bullies who in her opinion haven't really changed much since they tried to pull what they did in the sports festival, but that was her view. She welcomed them all in and saw Yagi and Todoroki in the room as well, which annoyed her, but she accepted it for now. What can we do for you all? Stella asked, and everyone was silent and looked towards Yagi. She gulped a bit and stepped forward. We were planning to go rescue Bakugo. It's been nearly half a day and they still haven't gotten him, and we don't know what the league is doing to him. Yaoyorozu said she had a tracking device to a device she and a 1B student put on a Nomu, so we know where to look. We want to go after him. We wanted to see if you were willing to help since you are so powerful. Yagi stated, and Stella was FNG stunned. Yagi had the balls to ask her to rescue one of Izuku's abusers, and Stella thought Yagi had gone mental. There are many reasons for my answer, but no, Stella stated flatly, and the students that had agreed to go were in shock. The ones going that Stella knew of so far as Yagi, Todoroki, Kirishima, Shiro, and possibly Yaoyorozu. It was mainly the people that were all friends with Bakugo and the other 2 idiots except Shoto and Kaminari who were out cold still, so that meant 4 to 5 of her classmates. Kirishima asked her why she wouldn't go and that they shouldn't leave Bakugo to the league since he didn't deserve it. Stella just shook her head and said that she wasn't going to go out and commit crimes because they wanted to save him. While this was going on, she had texted Izuku about their plans and he had authorized Hitoshi to use his quirk to keep them contained. She showed her phone to him and he nodded his head and waited for a chance to do it. You know, if you go through with this, then you can kiss your place at UA goodbye, and anyway it's foolish to ask Hitoshi or me to save Bakugo when we would rather have nothing to do with him. Debating whether he deserves it or not is not our place, but going out to commit vigilantism is not something I'm going to do for someone like Bakugo. Was for Hitoshi, then maybe you could get me to agree, but for Bakugo, I'd never risk it since I don't see him as someone I would risk my future for. Stella stated, and the others were in shock, but Yagi and Todoroki looked like they got the hint of why she wouldn't go, but they still didn't like it. Kirishima then said that it wasn't heroic to deny someone from being reduced, and Stella snapped back that Bakugo wasn't being denied rescue since the pro heroes were seeing to it and they were actually risking his life by going and risking their lives as well. As they kept talking, Hitoshi spoke up. Hey guys, he said, and they all looked at him, and he said he would go. It's all about going beyond, and he said, and they finished it, which allowed him to trap them all in the quirk. Sit down and wait until a teacher from UA gets here, Hitoshi stated as he looked at Stella. We need to be careful of Yagi since she has broken out of it before. He stated, and she nodded her head, but she couldn't really do anything since Izuku had only authorized Hitoshi, but they were in luck as Yagi didn't snap out. Most likely One for All is not breaking her out since that is surely how she escaped last time in the battle. They are likely in agreement to stop her from doing this. Stella thought as they waited about 30 minutes before a teacher from UA arrived at their room. It was none other than Eraserhead, who saw the students trapped in the quirk. He then looked at Stella and Hitoshi for details, and they informed him that the others were planning on using the device that Yaoyorozu had made, and they were unclear if she was involved fully or not. Eraserhead nodded his head and told Hitoshi to break the control, but congratulated him for holding it so long, which he nodded his head at. Dad's training has paid off, Hitoshi stated with a smirk, and Aizawa nodded his head. The students came out of the quirk control and paled when they saw Aizawa, and then they all looked at Hitoshi and Stella. You were kind of stupid asking 2 people that don't care for Bakugo at all to help rescue him when there are pro heroes doing a rescue already. You will all be under my watch now at UA since you have been discharged, since I can't trust you all to not break the law. Get moving since the bus is outside to take you to campus. Aizawa stated as they all put their heads down in shame, and some grumbled about being betrayed by their classmate, which Hitoshi just rolled his eyes at. Don't ask me to commit crimes when you don't have an actual need to commit the said crimes. Hitoshi snapped back and they flinched at his statement since it was true. The heroes were working on it and they had no true need to do their own rescue. They soon were all on the bus and headed off to UA as time passed and it was getting darker and darker. This meant that the raid by the pro heroes would be going on within the next few hours, and the only thing they could all do would be to watch as it happens and watch as history change right in front of them all as several secrets would be revealed. Third POV. Izuku was currently sitting on a building edge. He had received news from Stella that Aizawa had indeed gotten the idiot classmates of hers that wanted to go and do an illegal rescue raid and likely get themselves end. They are stupid thinking they could do anything here when this is the same league that had created a weapon that was strong enough to take All Might on. Bunch of idiots. Izuku thought as he sat there on the ledge. The raid on the bar and warehouse would be going on in a few more hours and he could only wait for it to happen. Izuku's main goal was the doctor above everything else, and he would be leaving the other heroes and All Might to go after Bakugo since Izuku wanted to bring the entire league to an end here and now. As Izuku was waiting on the edge of the building, he heard someone come behind him, and he turned around to find the one and only All Might. What do you want, All Might? Izuku asked in a monotone voice. All Might in his skinny form walked to the edge and sat near Izuku. I wanted to talk about several things. First, I wanted to apologize for not listening to you about the training camp, though hindsight is always 20/20. All Might stated, and Izuku just rolled his eyes. If you think this will stop me from coming after you, your wife, and the school after all of this are over, then you are wrong. UA has kept making ridiculous mistakes since they believed they were untouchable and have been proven wrong again and again. Izuku stated, and All Might shook his head and said it wasn't to stop that and it was Izuku's right to go after them since he was Hitoshi's parent. Second, I wanted to apologize for your childhood and how badly your mother and myself screwed up in not seeing what Izumi was doing. In screwing up in how we treated you even though I was quirkless myself. We shouldn't have treated you like that. All Might stated, and Izuku tensed. He was not planning to have this conversation anytime soon, and here All Might was having it and Izuku's past anger was boiling. Fine, you want to have this conversation, then let's have this conversation. Did you know Dad made me promise him something? Izuku stated, and All Might was silent and just looked at Izuku. He made me promise to not repeat his mistakes and to not come to hunt you and your family down for the anger and pain I held against you all. He made me promise not to end your daughter for all the pain and suffering she put me through. He made me promise I wouldn't lay a hand on all of you in anger, and I'm finding it really hard to keep that promise because I want you three to suffer. Izuku stated as he stood up and glared at All Might, who flinched back a bit. I want you to suffer for all the agony I had to go through. From going to bed at night for years wondering why the person I saw as my father hated me. Why my own mother hated me. Why my own sister hated me. I wanted you all to suffer and understand how it was for me to be banging my own wounds up since you all refused to get me medical care. That I had to live with hating myself for years even after my dad found me. God, the only reason I keep the green hair and eyes is because Stella loves them and wants me to love myself. I'd rather turn it all white, but she keeps me held down out of my anger and suffering. I wanted you all to feel what it was like to wonder would it be better to go over the edge of the roof and finally end it. I wanted you all to feel and understand that I was so broken due to all of you that I restored to harming myself for some sense of control. I wanted you all to feel and understand what it was like to have everything taken from you because even after the Seven's death you still had Gran Torino and the others to help you while I had no one. I had no one to turn to. I had no one to help me from breaking. I had no one to care for because you all kept them away with your lies. I hate you all. Izuku stated in a loud, angered voice as he was starting to lose control of himself as the shadows were reacting to his anger and gathering up to him, and Izuku so badly wanted to end All Might where he stood, but the effing damn memories from before he was 4 kept him from doing it. Those damn memories. I really hate them, yet they stop me from going down the path that Dad didn't want me to go down on. Izuku thought as he calmed his emotions down and breathed in and out. All Might just sat there in shock and silence at Izuku's outburst. Leave All Might while I've regained control of my emotions. Bringing these topics up without Stella or my father nearby to stop me isn't a wise thing to do, Izuku stated in a calm voice, but All Might could tell it was strained. He got up and walked away a bit before turning his head. I'm sorry. I am so sorry for what we did to you. One day I wish we can sit down and enjoy each other's company, but I don't know if I can ever make it up to you to reach that point. I am sorry, my boy. All Might stated as he transformed and jumped away from Izuku. Izuku though only broke down once All Might left and broke into tears. Good. I hate them. I really hope you are happy with your 8th user of One for All, uncle, because I find him annoying. Izuku muttered as he recomposed himself. He needed to focus on the task at hand, and it was the raid that would happen in about an hour, so he decided to head to the location of the bar raid team since he wanted to see if the doctor was at that location first. Though Izuku did have crows flying or sitting in the area of the warehouse and waiting to see what happens with that team as well. As Izuku was waiting for the remaining time to come to an end, he received a message from the UN. His orders changed slightly as they wanted anyone with the League of Villains ended off if they can't be captured with priority and on-site orders being on the Doctor and Shigaraki. Izuku confirmed the orders and wondered if All Might would hate him after this. Now you might be wondering why he would hate him, and it's simple. Shigaraki is Tenko Shimura, and Izuku knows that full well after researching where Shigaraki came from. It was hard, but a family died years ago in a similar accident to how the gate was destroyed at UA. Izuku was looking to find Shigaraki's identity since he didn't think the name was real and came across the case and found that the son was never confirmed dead and the rest of the family's quirks were confirmed, which meant that Tenko Shimura had become Shigaraki at the doctor's hand. The doctor likely did it to F with All Might since he turned All Might's master's grandson into a villain. Izuku thought. The UN was aware of Shigaraki's true identity, but it didn't matter. They had connected so many deaths to the man and he was so unstable that they didn't see it possible for him to ever be redeemed. They also didn't want the League to continue after that night and continue to undermine heroes in Japan since the UN was already investigating Japan's Commission for Corruption. Izuku decided to call Stella and have her help him calm down a bit more from his talk with All Might. As he was on the phone with her, she reassured him that he had all the rights to be angry at what they did and that she was proud of him for controlling his anger and not lashing out at All Might. Izuku thanked her and realized what time it was and told her he needed to go since the raid would be starting any moment. Stella just told him to be careful and to come home safe at the end of it, which he said he would. I love you, Stella. When you graduate, I am putting a ring on that finger, Izuku said with a chuckle and heard her let out a shocked tone at what he said as he hanged it up. He received a text message a few moments later from her calling him an idiot, but her lovable idiot. Hitoshi sent a text saying that she had broken several dishes since they had gotten discharged and had walked in only moments before he called as Stella was doing dishes. Izuku chuckled at the result he got and told Hitoshi to stay in the house with Stella since the night would get chaotic, and Hitoshi said they would. Third POV. Izuku got the move on and was outside of the bar location as the raid team had arrived. Izuku started to manipulate the shadows the best he could. He was going for an ending blow on Shigaraki if he was in the bar and the doctor wasn't. If the doctor was, then he would be ended first, but Izuku didn't want the heroes to see him doing it since it would cause some confusion since only he received the end on-site orders for Shigaraki and the doctor. That was the thing with being a special agent hero. They ended far more than normal heroes do, who likely had a harder time bringing themselves to end, while special agents train themselves to end without much hesitation. Now, special agents aren't mindless ending drones, and the UN knows it. They know they need to provide their agents good reasons for the end on-site orders, or the agents might reject doing it since the UN didn't have 100% control over them and the agents could defer back to their own governments, but the UN has always been good on providing the reasons and evidence to back of their orders, and the special agents haven't ever rejected an order so far. As such, Izuku was looking for a perfect chance to end Shigaraki or the doctor's lives if it presented itself. He would rather not end on live TV, but he would do what he needs to do to ensure future peace. Izuku waited and waited until All Might knocked the wall down. Izuku used a crow to get a visual inside the building by having a few flies in when the dust was going on, and they hid near the ceiling. Once the dust settled and everyone could see, they saw Bakugo standing up being cornered by the league members. Within seconds, Kamui would has his branches capturing them all. Dabi the fire user, as they learned, was about to light the place on fire, but Gran Torno burst in, knocking him out cold. Izuku saw a perfect chance to prepare his ending strike on Shigaraki, as Izuku used the wood branches from Kamui Woods to hide his shadows. "Sorry, Kamui Woods, but you presented me a perfect chance," Izuku thought as he sent the shadows from Kamui Woods' feet up to his body and through his wood branches, which only strengthened his shadows since there were shadows hidden in the branches. Izuku had enough shadows under his control and had them placed over Shigaraki's heart area, waiting for the perfect chance to cover the end up, since that was how Izuku operated most of the time on the end orders. Izuku would cover up the ends by making it look like accidents happened or something else during a battle with another hero went wrong and the villain just died. Izuku's wish for a good chance to hide the end happened as All Might was asking where the doctor was. Shigaraki broke into laughter and a voice was heard from the TV on the wall. Nomus started to appear, which didn't make sense due to the Nomu factory being taken out, but then Izuku realized there was the other factory as well that they had no idea about. Of course, he would bring Nomus from there. Izuku thought as he watched the Nomu factory raid go south, as the doctor made an appearance with a lot of powerful Nomus that caused a lot of destruction. As the heroes were dealing with the Nomus, sludge came out of the villains and Bakugo's mouths as they started to teleport, and it was right at that moment that Izuku landed the ending blow and ended Shigaraki by puncturing his chest and destroy his heart using his shadows. If a doctor or someone looked, they would be hard-pressed to find the small hole his shadows made, but if they looked at the heart, it would appear as if his internals caused a heart rupture, ending him, since that is how Izuku made it appear. Within a seconds, Shigaraki bled out internally and had died due to how large the rupture Izuku made, and Shigaraki laid on the ground at the warehouse dead, but the others just thought he got knocked out, which wasn't true. All Might, though, back at the bar cursed as the villains and Bakugo escaped, and then they heard about the raid team at the factory and the detective sent them to go deal with it. As such, All Might and Gran Torino blasted off to go to the second raid site as Izuku used his crows to teleport to the area around the warehouse. As Izuku arrived, he saw the destruction that was caused and cursed the doctor. The doctors likely ended a large number of people with those Nomus. I'm going to have to get involved directly, which limits my ability to end him without people seeing it happen. Izuku thought as he looked for a chance to get involved and make an impact on the tide of the battle as the heroes were getting pushed back. It was then he saw Best Jeanist about to be ended when he jumped in and grabbed the Nomu with his shadows and tossed it across the field. "You all right?" he asked the hero, who nodded his head and got up to fight again. Izuku looked around and created some shadow clones and ordered them to help the other heroes or evacuate people from the fight if they were civilians or injured too much. After a few moments, All Might arrived on site and blasted into the main Nomus that stood guard around the doctor. Idiot, shouldn't have gone straight for them and worked with others to get rid of the other Nomus before we all worked on the main Nomus. Izuku thought, since he could see that the 4 main Nomus were packed with a shit ton of quirks that were likely the source of most of the damage in this area. As Izuku helped the other heroes defeat the Nomu, they all started to push further into the zone and saw All Might getting his ass handed to him. "This is why I call him an idiot," Izuku muttered, and the other heroes looked at him confused and a bit shocked that he called All Might an idiot. "Okay, split into 4 separate squads centered around my shadow clones. I will switch between the squads with my main body when I see any squad struggling. We need to get All Might from out of those attacks, since he is about to be defeated like the idiot he is for going in alone against a big threat like this," Izuku stated, and some heroes looked unconvinced, but Best Jeanist saw how Izuku worked and remembered he was a special agent and ordered everyone to follow his commands, which they agreed to do. Soon, the squads all pushed forward and heard the conversation between the doctor and All Might, who was on his knees from the fight. Bakugo and all of the villains, including the dead Shigaraki, were near the doctor being protected by the Nomu. Bakugo didn't have an escape route, but that wasn't going to matter for Izuku, who had an idea of how to get him. "Did you know, All Might, that Shigaraki is actually your master's grandson? His real name is Tenko Shimura." The doctor stated, and All Might paled at the new information and struggled to get back up as people were yelling for him to stand up and fight. Izuku ordered the heroes to attack, and right as they caught the attention of the doctor, Izuku used his crows to teleport right in the center of the villains and grab Bakugo, and teleported out towards Best Jeanist. Best Jeanist, take Bakugo and get him out of here since I need to help deal with the Nomu. Izuku said, and everyone was shocked at how quickly Izuku had grabbed Bakugo. The doctor was in shock at seeing his hostage being taken and cursed Izuku. "You're the pro-hero hunter who's been causing me issues," yelled out the doctor, and the cameras from the news helicopter were now on Izuku. Izuku just chuckled as he spoke. "Indeed, that is me. Now, how about you just give up and surrender already? It's time for this all to come to an end, don't you agree?" Izuku asked, and the doctor looked pissed. "Indeed, it's time to end this, but with yours and All Might's deaths. Nomu. End All Might," the doctor yelled out as he stated at Izuku. Izuku cursed under his breath and jumped towards All Might and tanked the shot that would have ended All Might, who was without a doubt at his limit. "All Might, you're already at your limit, so get the hell out of here," Izuku could be heard saying, and All Might frown as he stood up. "I still got some fight left in me," he yelled out and punched one Nomu who was about to end a hero. Izuku just rolled his eyes. "Idiot. If you stay, your damn form is going to be revealed. I hate your guts, but that isn't something we need going on right in the middle of the battle," Izuku thought as he charged at the main Nomu he was fighting. Izuku would land blows on it, but what others didn't know was that he was ripping the quirks from the Nomus out, which failed but destroyed the said quirks instead, which just weakened the Nomu overall. The fight kept moving forward when it happened. One of the Nomus raised its fist and blasted All Might, which sent him flying back, and as the dust cleared, the world was in shock as they saw his skinny form. The battle came to a standstill as the doctor orders his Nomu to stop attacking since the doctor wanted the world to enjoy the sight of their so-called symbol of peace. "Look at your pathetic state, All Might. It's such a shame that you've been reduced to this state, but what are you going to do now that you can barely stand anymore? You would likely die to the next attack now, wouldn't you, All Might?" The doctor stated, and Izuku didn't like the implications of those words, and Izuku was right. He hated it when he was right, when things looked horrible, because that meant things typically were going to go from bad to downright shit. Nomu number 3, land the ending blow on All Might. The doctor ordered out, and all the heroes tried to get to All Might, but they were all too far since All Might and the Nomu were a bit off from the last blow that sent them away from the main group. Izuku was pissed. "This is why I told you to leave, damn it," Izuku said as he coughed blood up and out of his mask. Izuku looked down and saw it. He saw the claw of the Nomu going right into his stomach and piecing out from behind him a bit. Now you might wonder how this happened. Well, Izuku teleported right in front of All Might and took the blow head-on, but the claw was sharp enough and had enough power behind it to break through some of his quirks that would have deflected it. Third POV. Stella was sitting in the living room watching the battle on the TV. She saw how it was going and she knew Izuku would win because he always won in the end, but for some reason, she had an ill feeling in the bottom of her stomach, and Hitoshi had it as well. "Mom, something's going to happen to Dad, isn't it?" Hitoshi asked, and she nodded her head. Hitoshi always liked to joke around about them being his mother and father, but in these moments you could see that he truly did see them as his parents, since they showed far more love and care for him than other people did. As the battle went forward and switched from the bar to the warehouse, the feeling only got worse. Then it happened. As All Might was getting pushed back and defeated, his skinny form was revealed for the world to see. Damn it. That man should have left if he was that close to his limit. Stella stated in anger, but the feeling didn't go away. The feeling of dread, and as the battle moved forward, they saw the Nomu go for the ending blow on the symbol of peace, and that is when Stella fell to her knees. She saw Izuku standing between the Nomu and All Might with the creature's claws going right through him. "Nu, why did you do it for that man of all people?" Stella yelled out as he broke down in tears at seeing Izuku being impaled. Even though she knew he had healing quirks, it didn't mean he was immortal. Izumi Midoriya was just as enviable as everyone else, with just extra steps required to do it, and she was scared of seeing him like that. Hitoshi fell to the floor as well and was in shock at seeing what he thought was an invisible father being impaled. "He is so sleeping on the couch when he gets home for this shit," Stella stated as she calmed down a bit but was still in shock. She then hugged Hitoshi, who was still in shock and was afraid of losing his father, but Stella just reassured him that he had a lot of heal quirks to heal the damage but would be tired when he gets home, and Hitoshi just nodded his head but kept his eyes on the screen. With everyone at you, Inizu was sitting in a large conference room watching the battle happen, and he with everyone else was in shock. They just witnessed All Might's form being revealed to the world, and the students in the room who tried to do a rescue mission were in shock as well. Aizawa chooses this as a perfect chance for an educational lesson / this is why you were stopped from going. You would have died going there, do you understand? He yelled at the idiotic students of his that wanted to go and save Bakugo, who had already been saved by Izuku. They all nodded their heads in fear at the sight they were seeing, while Izumi was hugging her mother since they were afraid of their family member dying. As they all sat there, they heard the order from the doctor on the TV, and everyone's eyes widened in shock at what they saw. They expected to see All Might get ended, but instead, they got Izumi Midoriya standing in between the creature and All Might. No. My baby boy. No. Inko cried out in shock at seeing her son impaled. Even though they were on bad terms, she still loved him even though she was a horrible mother. Izumi was in shock and had fallen to her knees as Todoroki just hugged her and tried to knock her out of her shock but had no luck. The classmates were staring at the TV in horror as they watched the pro-hero hunter who was stronger than All Might get impaled. Everyone around Japan and the world watched as Izuku pulled the claw out of his stomach and a large number of shadows raised from him. They could hear him talking from the TV since the camera crews got the courage and got a bit closer with their helicopter to be in range. Damn, that hurt. No matter, it's time to stop holding back, but let's hope there is something left to identify your body, doctor. Izuku stated as everyone on site felt a sense of pressure from Izuku as the shadows swirled around the wound Izuku had and moved away, and everyone saw he was perfectly healed up. Oh? Your quirk allows you to make your body more or less shadows itself. That is how you made the clones of yourself out of shadows, isn't it? The doctor asked, and Izuku chuckled at the doctor's misunderstanding but didn't correct it. Izuku then grabbed the Nomu's face and his eyes widened a bit, and then boom, the Nomu exploded as shadows burst out of it as Izuku had fed it a large number of shadows and was forcing the body to expand from the inside outwards, which caused it to break apart. What did you just do? The doctor yelled out, and Izuku chuckled as the shadows swirled around him and made large wings on him and what appeared to be a crown. I stuffed it full of my shadows until the body couldn't take it anymore and exploded. I'm going to do it to each and every single creature of yours, and then I'm going to do it to you, doctor. You've pissed me the hell off. Izuku stated with a dark tone as he dashed forward, and the doctor ordered the Nomus to stop him, but Izuku created a scythe out of the shadows and just cut right through them as he grabbed them with a hand and forced shadows into the bodies, exploding them. Everyone was in shock at his overwhelming power, but Izuku didn't care as he was after the damn doctor, and Izuku wanted to end this damn mission. The doctor was getting afraid and decided to leave. We're leaving. Pick up the knocked out men and group together now. The doctor yelled, and Izuku heard it and yelled out that he wasn't letting them escape as he created shadow clones to deal with the Nomus and charged off towards the doctor. One Nomu tried to get in his way, but out of nowhere came Endeavor, who slammed into the Nomu and set it ablaze, causing it to die. End that damn doctor already! He shouted, and Izuku smirked. With pleasure. Izuku yelled as he made his scythe again and used some quirks to make him faster and appeared right in front of the doctor and slammed right down on the doctor, cutting into him. However, the doctor's body switched out with another person, and it was none other than Dabi that got cut in half. Izuku looked behind himself and saw the doctor standing where Dabi used to be. Oh, doctor, I can go through them all if I need to. I will not be letting you walk away from this alive since you will cause future issues. Izuku stated with a dark tone as he narrowed his eyes at the doctor. The doctor yelled for the league members to stop Izuku, but as they looked at Izuku they raised their hands up in surrender since they didn't want to deal with him. They had just lost Dabi and a lot of the Nomus. There was only one main Nomu left, which Endeavor was currently ending off by burning its head off, which stopped them from working. Izuku walked towards the doctor and the doctor crawled backward. He didn't have enough time to call his Nomu to teleport himself, and he realized his critical screw-up in not having a second escape route since he underestimated him. Then he saw how Izuku ignored the other villains once they surrendered and decided on a new plan. I can escape later on somehow if I surrender now. The doctor thought and his plan would have worked, but he didn't know he had an end-on-sight order for him and Izuku was going to end him one way or another. As Izuku raised his blade up to end the fight, the doctor yelled out, "I surrender! I give up!" He yelled and Izuku's blade froze right in midair. This damn coward, realizing I can't end him on live TV with him saying that. Izuku thought, "Fine then, don't fight, arrest, because the moment you do you die, do you understand?" Izuku asked and the doctor nodded his head with a smile on his face as police and other heroes charged the site. As the doctor was loaded into the police van, he didn't mistake Izuku's smirk that Izuku sent his way and the doctor shivered at the sight. What the doctor didn't know was that Izuku had a crow flying in the air with a perfect angle to see inside of the police van, and due to it being nighttime, well, there was quite a bit of shadow caused by the moon that night. As such, the moment the van drove away and was a decent enough distance, Izuku attacked with his shadows and ended the doctor's life, but not in the same way he did with Shigaraki's. He made the shadows travel up the doctor's body and pierce into the body and grip the doctor's heart and made it appear as if he had a heart attack. It was an understandable thing to happen after such a large and adrenaline-pumping fight, especially with the doctor being as old as he looked. After Izuku confirmed with his shadows that the doctor's heart stopped beating and he waited for several minutes to confirm that he would be unable to be revived, he pulled his shadows away and pulled his phone out and texted that Shigaraki was dead and the doctor was as well. The UN and American officials asked how since they watched them be put into the vans. Izuku smirked and explained how Shigaraki died the first time and that authorities thought he was knocked out from the bar, but in truth, he was dead, and they would find out when they checked him at the prison. He then explained how he ended the doctor's life while he was being transported in the van and the officials thanked him for the work. They also told him that they wanted an update of the entire case in a day or so when he had gotten some rest and anything was gathered from the league's bases so they could decide how the case would move forward. Izuku told them via text that he would alert them when he was ready and he pocketed his phone. Izuku looked around and saw all of the damage and destruction, but he also saw all of the cameras pointed at him, which made him shake his head. Good thing my mask didn't break. However, I know Stella is going to make me sleep on the couch for the getting impaled portion of this fight, Izuku thought as he walked around the battlefield. The media was trying to get him to answer some questions, but he ignored them. Izuku made a large number of clones and he just sat down as he ordered them to start searching for survivors. God, this is taking a lot of energy out of me, Izuku muttered. Everyone though was impressed that he was helping on the search and rescue operations as his clones got to work on finding people. In truth, Izuku was using his clones to find the people hidden under rubble so they had a better chance of surviving since the others would take time to get to them, and Izuku was also using this as a way to avoid going home to get yelled at. Third POV. It's been a few days since the battle that has been dubbed as the Kamino Ward incident, and let's say it wasn't a fun 2 days since Izuku was forced to sleep on the couch by Stella, who would glare at him for taking the blow for all might. Hitoshi was zero help for Izuku as Hitoshi was also pissed with Izuku, which made matters worse. They both understood why Izuku did it, but they still didn't like or agree with him having done it. As such, Izuku had to spend several nights on the couch as punishment, which made him super tired since he couldn't sleep that well without Stella near him. He always found that he could do a power nap fine without her when he wasn't on bad terms with her, but when he was, it was like his body just refused to meet his needs and joined in on punishing him. It was a complete betrayal and Izuku hated it, but he accepted it, and by the end of the second day he was back in bed with Stella and was able to sleep. Now, outside of him being punished, Izuku had learned the locations of the other Nomu factories, and the heroes all raided them without Izuku getting involved, since without them being ordered they shouldn't have any trouble taking the Nomus out, and he was right. As such, Izuku reported back to his bosses in American and the UN that his mission was completed, which brought up the issue that Izuku was having as he sat in the living room with Stella and Hitoshi. So, as you both know, I was assigned to Japan due to my case, Izuku stated, and they nodded their heads. With my case now being done, the officials in the UN and America are asking if I want to be reassigned to America or what I want to do, so we need to decide, Izuku stated, and they looked at him and asked what he wanted to do. Honestly, I would rather go back to America since I wouldn't have to deal with everyone from my past, in all honesty, but you two have friends here now, so I don't want this to just be about me. Izuku stated, and they nodded their heads and thought it over. Hitoshi honestly didn't care since he didn't exactly have friends outside of Stella and Izuku who were also his parents. He was more or less just existing inside of 1A and hanged out with Stella's friends when they called him over. I don't care if we stay or go, would I still be allowed to attend a hero school in America? Hitoshi asked, and Izuku nodded his head that Hitoshi would be allowed to. The American officials have already said they would arrange for both Stella and Hitoshi to attend a school in New York, which made Hitoshi happy. Izuku then looked at Stella for her opinion. I like the friends I made, but I also kind of want to go by to America so we can be with our parents. There's also the fact that we likely aren't well liked by a few classmates for exposing their plans to UA. So, let's take a few more days and decide on what we want to do. Stella suggested, and Izuku nodded his head at that and texted the officials that they would need a few more days to decide on what to do, which they accepted. Soon another few days passed and Izuku was asked to attend a meeting at UA since the staff was talking about all of the recent events that happened. This is how Izuku found himself in a tense room with all of the staff who Izuku had warned against doing the camp where they did it. Nizu walked into the room with the police detective, Sir Night Eye, Gran Torino, and Endeavor. Let's start this meeting, but let's hit a few topics first. I wanted to inform you all that the doctor from the League of Villains and Shigaraki aka Tenko Shimura was born reported dead on arrival to the prison facility on the day of the battle. Nizu stated, and the room was shocked. Well, all except Izuku, Nizu, and the detective. Nizu noticed that Izuku was shocked and decided to ask about it. Izuku, you don't seem shocked, as if you already knew? Nizu asked, and everyone looked at him. Izuku just looked at Nizu and shrugged his shoulders. Even if I did know, what about it? Izuku stated calmly. The detective decided to ask questions since there was an open police investigation trying to figure out when they died. Izuku, did you have a hand in their deaths? He asked, and Izuku looked at the detective. Are you asking as a police detective or as my uncle? Izuku asked, and the detective tensed a bit and said, as a detective. Then yes, I did. I did end them after all. Izuku stated without batting an eye, and everyone was in shock. You all look shocked? Did I not tell you my mission was about the doctor and the organization? Izuku said, and they all nodded their head, and All Might spoke up. That doesn't explain why you ended them? Heroes shouldn't end easily? He stated, and Izuku rolled his eyes. Do remember, I am a special agent hero that works for the UN. Those two were never going to walk away alive from this since they were deemed as threats that shouldn't be kept alive. As such, I followed my order and removed them for good. Shigaraki died during the bar raid and the doctor died during police custody in transport to the prison. Nothing is outside of my reach. The doctor knew I couldn't end him publicly after he surrendered, but he forgot that I could do it the moment he was out of the public eye. The other league members had captured or end orders on them, but Shigaraki and the doctor both had an end-on-sight order for any special agents that came across them. Izuku stated as he took his tea and drank some of it. The room was tense and what they heard, but Nizu nodded his head. Indeed, we forgot you do work as a special agent and would likely have received such orders from the start. Let's move on to the next topic of discussion. I am proposing dorms to be built for UA. Nizu stated, and they all nodded their heads in understanding since it would help keep the students safer since villains would be getting bolder with the fall of All Might. We need the homeroom teachers and All Might to go around to all of the parents and ask for them to allow the students to continue to go to UA and to move into the dorms. Any questions? Nizu asked and no one raised their hands. Then they started to move towards the past events and the fallout from them. At this point, everyone tensed a bit since Izuku had promised to hold All Might and Green Tornado publicly responsible for the events. Nizu looked at Izuku and he rolled his eyes. I feel as if you all expecting me to blow my lid? Izuku chuckled and they all felt like slamming their heads on the table at his calm behavior. Anyway, I indeed would love to take All Might and Green Tornado to the battling plate and publicly humiliate them, but my bosses back in America have asked me not to in fear of destabilizing Japan's society. As such, I have to keep my mouth silent as a pro-hero, but I was told I could sue you all as the parent of Hitoshi since that is my right. Izuku stated, and they all tensed since getting sued would screw the school right now and likely force the school into a very tight spot they can't recover from. Nizu looked at Izuku and Izuku at Nizu, and Izuku sighed. Sadly, I wouldn't like to ruin my uncle's school. Also, it's doubtful that Hitoshi, Stella, and myself will be staying anyway, so it's not like it matters. Izuku stated as if just didn't drop a bombshell on all of them. Aizawa sat up straight and asked Izuku what he meant, but Nizu knew. Your case is over, so you've been asked to return to America, haven't you? Nizu stated, and Izuku nodded his head. It's my decision on returning or not. Hitoshi doesn't care since he doesn't really have friends in 1A or UA. Stella has some friends but also would like to see our parents again. As such, we are undecided as it stands on returning to America. Izuku stated, and Nizu nodded his head in understanding. The meeting was a bit tenser, but they moved on to some other topics such as All Might's retirement and how that was likely to impact crime rates and the future of Japan. As the meeting went on, Izuku just wanted to leave, but he needed to stay. Soon though it came to an end and Izuku returned home and decided to just rest since he was still a bit tired. As such, he sat on the couch and joined Hitoshi and Stella, who were watching a movie. They asked him about the meeting and how it went, and Izuku gave them a summary of it. Overall, Izuku found it pointless, and Hitoshi mentioned how he didn't want to have to live on campus, nor did Stella want to live on campus since they would need to leave the home which they loved. Izuku agreed and said if they did stay, then he would ensure they are allowed to stay in the house and not forced on campus. Third POV. Izuku was sitting in his living room as he stared at All Might. Izuku hated the fact that that man was inside of his home, but he knew he needed to keep silent since he was here as a representative from UA to inquire if Stella and Hitoshi would be still attending UA, and if so, would they be moving onto the campus. Izuku sat there and thought back to the conversations that he has had with Stella and Hitoshi over the past few days in regards to the matter, and he was honestly happy with what was decided. Now, it was time for the decision to come out. The room was still tense though, as no one wanted to speak, so Aizawa got tired of it and decided to just break the silence and spoke up first. Okay, to break this silence and get this talk going, Izuku, you know why we are here. Have you all come to a decision? Aizawa asked as he looked at Izuku, who just sighed. Izuku then looked at Hitoshi and then to Stella, who both nodded their heads. Yes, we have, Izuku stated as he took a drink of his tea and looked at Aizawa. Sorry to say, but we've decided to return to America, and I will have Hitoshi and Stella transferred to a school in America. This is based on many reasons and just not my distaste for being near All Might and his pathetic excuse of a family. First, is for that reason, of course. Second, UA's repeated mistakes in allowing the attacks to continue on the school. 3. UA ignored the warning I gave them and still held the trip off campus, thinking it would be safer when it only endangered the students more. 4. UA's failure to properly certificate their staff. I know All Might doesn't have a teaching certificate, yet he is allowed to teach a class which has a dangerous element involved in it. That is the height of stupidity in my view. 5th, UA's glaring quirkish behavior via their entrance exam and their training, as the school is training them all to be geared towards spotlight heroes, which aren't a reality for Hitoshi and quite a few others in the first years. 6th, UA not proving a way for students seeking the underground hero path to really get visible experience, since internship offers to depend on showing off in the sports festival, which is counterproductive for underground heroes. 7th, the lack of mental education and professional help. As you have seen via this semester that 1A has undergone a lot of traumatic attacks, yet I've heard zero talks of requiring them to get therapy. 8th and the last one is that UA has shown a disregard for the health and well-being of their students throughout this entire semester, and honestly, if my bosses didn't want me to keep quiet and not destabilize Japan, I would take UA and All Might over the coals, but it's uncle's school and I'm not willing to cost people lives when I can just transfer my girlfriend and son to a far better school in America which will offer better training and help. The school they will transfer to will actually have an underground hero first-year class, which Hitoshi is being placed into since his training will be completely different from a limelight hero. Stella is being placed into an advanced class since she already has more experience due to previous training, so she will be placed with other students that can help push her forward. Overall, Japan's UA Hero course has failures on many fronts that have made this decision to return to America easier, since we would like to see our families and have them meet Hitoshi as well. Izuku stated as he grabbed his tea and drank more of it after having talked for so long. Aizawa and All Might were devastated. They had just been told that they will be losing 2 of their students from 1A. This meant the class numbers would go from 20 to 18 students, and they were losing some powerful students as well. Stella was overall just a completely dominating powerhouse, but Hitoshi was a powerhouse himself in regards to quirkless combat and battle plans due to Izuku teaching him. Hitoshi would have been a major player in the underground hero scene, but not anymore since he would be going to America instead, so they would benefit from him instead of Japan. They would also be losing Izuku, which he himself was a stronger powerhouse than All Might, even though he tended to avoid the cameras. He still could have helped keep Japan in peace, but now they would be losing him back to America. Aizawa sighed and looked at Izuku. I take it there is no way of changing this decision? He asked, and Izuku shook his head no. No, it's time we return to our family in America, and this is the perfect time to go back since it's the middle of the summer, so the next semester hasn't started in America yet either, which gives us time to adjust back in America and for Hitoshi to start getting familiar with the sites before entering school. I do know that the students go to the dorms at the end of the next week, so we plan to go say goodbye to everyone. There, before leaving, I ask you to inform Nizu to start the paperwork for the transfer. I'll text him the next of the school they will be transferring to. Izuku stated, and Aizawa nodded his head and moved to Izuku and hugged him. Don't be a stranger and make sure to call me and the others when you have time. If you are ever back in Japan, then come see Nizu and us, alright? Aizawa stated, and Izuku nodded his head. Aizawa then turned around and told All Might to get up and leave with him. However, All Might seemed to be in shock, and Izuku rolled his eyes. Aizawa then used his capture gear and lifted All Might's skinny form out of the home, and it was when they were standing outside that All Might snapped out of his shock and asked what happened. I'm assuming you went into mental shock at learning that they won't be returning to UA. They will show up to the move-in day at the dorms to say goodbye to everyone, but then they are returning to America. It's not honestly surprising, and Nizu anticipated this, to be honest, when he mentioned it the last time. Aizawa stated, and All Might wanted to go back in and try to convince Izuku to stay, but Aizawa stopped him. Don't even dare. It's done and decided on. There is nothing to do to change this decision. Aizawa said with a glare. He hated to admit it, but he was going to miss his nephew, but the Yagi family screwed it up too much that Izuku doesn't have many fond memories of Japan itself. Soon All Might gave up and went into the car, and they drove off to UA. Soon they arrived back at the school, and Inko with the rest of the staff saw that All Might and Aizawa looked saddened. Nizu asked if those who he thought would reject returning to UA did indeed reject. You were right on the money, sir, Aizawa stated as he sat down at his desk and took some headache medicine. Everyone looked confused until Snipe spoke up. You're talking about the Midoriyas, aren't you? Izuku isn't going to let Hitoshi or Stella return to UA, is he? Snipe stated, and everyone looked shocked, and then to Aizawa and All Might. More or less, but it isn't really him himself that isn't allowing them to return. Maybe in the sense of Hitoshi Midoriya, but in regards to Stella, we all know she has control in the relationship when she wants to. If she wanted to stay, without a doubt they would be staying, but Izuku gave many reasons on why it's illogical for them to stay, and if I was in their position I would make the same decision as well. Aizawa stated, and Nizu asked for the reasons even though he had a good idea on a handful of them. Aizawa then summarized the reasons, and Nizu nodded his head as he knew of some of the reasons, but the others did come out of the left field a bit, but he had to agree with them. He's right. We should have done far more in regards to the students' mental health. Starting next semester, I want all students to start undergoing several sessions with Hound Dog to make sure we catch anything. Though, that won't change their decision to leave. Nizu stated, and Aizawa nodded his head since he agreed that it wouldn't change Izuku's decision. We can only wait for them to say goodbye next week. They will likely be better taken care of in America. Especially Hitoshi Midoriya, since getting an underground hero section would be hard to do with our board of directors, since I must admit our school is quirkist in how we operate, even though I hate to admit it. Nizu stated, and the staff was shocked to hear him say it, but Aizawa wasn't, since he suffered due to the school's policies, since he had to go through the sports festival as well as Hitoshi did. Third POV. The last week between Aizawa and All Might coming to ask if they were going to be returning and the move-in day for UA has passed. Izuku had been communicating with his bosses back in America and had set up the enrollment for Hitoshi and Stella so that they could start right when the semester started. Izuku has also been communicating with his father and Stella's parents about the move. Izuku remembered back to the phone call and how it went since he was honest with his intentions. Vermilions and Dad. I want to be honest in our return. I don't want to move back in with you, Dad. I would like your help in finding a new home in New York for Hitoshi, Stella, and myself. I think the three of us have grown to being by ourselves in our own home and caring for Hitoshi as our son, so it would be a bit weird to move back in with you. I also plan to ask Stella to marry me once she graduates from hero school as well, so I would like to already be in our own home by then anyway. Izuku stated, and they were silent for a while but agreed in the end. They did ask what Izuku wanted to do about the home that was owned in Japan, and Izuku thought about it. We could throw it into a separate business for an investment property or something and rent it out here in Japan, since honestly it's a lovely home and could bring rental income in so that they could recuperate the money spent purchasing it. Izuku stated, and they all thought about TI, and Izuku also suggested that it would be a useful way of having a vacation home in Japan. If the house wasn't rented out to vacationers, then the family could stay at the house instead of going to a hotel while they were in Japan, which they agreed on as it was a solid plan. After talking a bit longer, they started to search for a new home and soon found one which Izuku looked at the images for and agreed it would be a good place to live in, so he asked Stella and Hitoshi if they wanted to see the images, but they told him that they trusted his ability to purchase a home since he helped find the one they were currently living in, and it was amazing. Soon, the last day in Japan arrived and Izuku had the private plane from his father come to Japan. It would be ready to leave roughly after they were done with their goodbyes. After talking a bit longer, they made their way into the car and had all of their bags packed. They weren't going to be transferring everything to America since they could just rebuy everything, so the main things they packed were more personal effects and clothing they really liked that they didn't think they could find in America. Everything else was packed up and donated to charities that would need them instead of them just being thrown away in the garbage. After they were all done with that, they drove off to UA to say their final goodbyes to everyone. The drive was nice and relaxing as Izuku played some relaxing music on the drive to UA. You guys ready for this? Izuku asked, and they shrugged. Are you ready for the Yagis to likely say something about you leaving for a second time? Hitoshi asked, and Izuku rolled his eyes. They can't stop me, but even if they do, it is done and final. We will be going to America by the end of this afternoon, so it doesn't matter regardless of what they do. Izuku stated, and Hitoshi nodded his head. Stella just reminded Izuku to not allow his anger to control him, which he nodded at. Soon, they arrived at UA and got out of the car and walked towards the dorms, and saw that the students from 1A had just arrived and were setting their luggage down on the ground. Izuku also saw the staff walking up to the 1A dorms as well. The students that had no idea what was going on asked why all of the teachers were there. Aizawa looked and saw Izuku and his family and then looked at the students. First, let's talk about your stupid actions in regards to the Kamino Ward incident. As some of you know, a portion of your class was going to perform a rescue operation and try to save Bakugo, but as you could all see through the events, that would have likely led to their death. I also know that a good portion of you knew about these actions and didn't decide to tell us about them. Luckily, Hitoshi Midoriya and Stella Vermilion were smart enough to alert UA so we could stop it, or we would have dead students on our hands. I want you to know that the only reason you aren't being kicked out of the hero course if you knew or were going to do the operation is the fact of All Might's retirement and Japan needing more future heroes in the next few years. Understood? He said while yelling the last part and glaring, and they all nodded their heads at him. He then looked at Nizu, who spoke up. The reason we are all here is to say goodbye to the Midoriya family. Hitoshi and Stella will be joining pro-hero hunter Izuku Midoriya on his return to America since his case is now finished. It's also due to many reasons of UA's failures that they don't see UA as a safe option for their careers and will be attending at hero school in America that can better fit their needs. Nizu stated as he gestured towards Izuku, Hitoshi, and Stella that were standing on the side of them all, which the class had just now noticed. Yagi, Todoroki, and Bakugo's eyes widened since this was the first they heard about it. The rest of the class was also shocked at this development since both of them were strong students that were a part of their class. Stella's friends moved over to her and asked if it was true, and she nodded her head. You girls have my phone number, so if you ever wanted to talk, then send me a text and I will try to find a time due to the time zone differences. Also, if you girls are ever in America, let me know where and I will see if I can swing by. I will be living in New York. New York if you are ever near there though. Stella stated as she hugged her friends. Izuku just sat on the bench near the dorms as Yagi, Bakugo, and Todoroki walked over. Some of the teachers were ready to act if the conversation took a turn for the worst. Izuku looked at them and just stayed silent when Yagi decided to just hug him out of nowhere. Stella was prepared to act and get her off because she honestly didn't know how to react to Izumi Yagi hugging him. Everyone was silent as the class was confused about why the teachers got so tense at seeing Yagi hug her own brother. They knew that the relationship was strained but didn't know how bad it was. I'm sorry. I know I may never get the chance to say it if I don't get to say it right now. However, I am sorry for the torment that we put you through and the neglect that you received from the family. Izumi Yagi stated, and Izuku wanted to smack her so hard right now, but his damn memories from his childhood kept bugging him. You're sorry? Well, sorry doesn't fix all the scars you and the other two gave me now, does it? Izuku stated with a stiff tone. Sorry didn't stop me from wanting to go over the edge from all the abuse and neglect that I received from the family, from people who were meant to love me. I didn't even know All Might wasn't my actual father until my dad found me when I ran away. I saw him as my biological father and was unaware of the fact. So sorry doesn't take away all the mental damage that those two bastards of parents caused, nor the mental and physical damage I received at your hands, at Bakugo hands, at Todoroki hands. Izuku stated, and the class was shocked at what they were hearing from Izumi Midoriya. They looked at All Might and Green Tornado for some sort of denial, but they gave none. Instead, they only lowered their heads down in shame, which just confirmed what was being told, and that scared them that the symbol of peace had allowed such things to happen in his own home. However, regardless of my hatred for you, I do hope you three can be better human beings in the future and go on to be amazing heroes. Otherwise, you just might end up on my list of targets that the UN deems dirty and needs to be removed. Izuku stated with a smile that sent shivers down their backs. Yagi nodded her head and Izuku stood up and leaned down to her and whispered something. Also, don't let those old fools inside OFA dictate your usage of OFA. If we meet again, I expect an entertaining fight from you ninth. Izuku stated as he walked away towards Stella and Hitoshi, though he stopped next to Toshinori Yagi and Inko Yagi. He gritted his teeth as he raised a wall of shadows quickly, and the UA staff was a bit concerned, but they couldn't do shit. About a minute later the wall came down and Izuku walked away to Hitoshi and Stella as he asked if they were ready to leave, which they were. Uncle Aizawa, want to join me at the airport? Izuku asked and he agreed as Nizu told him to go. As they all got in the car and Izuku drove off, Aizawa asked what happened inside of the shadows and Izuku was silent for a bit. I decided to explore a desire of mine. I desired to know what it felt like to get hugged by that woman with some sense of kindness. I told her to just imagine me as her daughter that she loved so much if she couldn't inspire any good feelings towards me. Izuku stated as a tear went down his and Aizawa saw it in the mirror but no one commented on it. I also punched All Might in the gut, Izuku said with a smirk and Aizawa laughed at it. Though, Izuku didn't tell them that he hugged that man as well. It did not represent forgiveness and he told All Might and Green Tornado that as well since he still had deep-rooted hatred towards them. It was honestly him just exploring a desire from his childhood and in Izuku's honest view. He wished he could hug that woman more without feeling like he wanted to throw up, but Izuku agreed with his heart that Hisashi Midoriya felt much better to hug than All Might ever did and Izuku was glad about that fact. Soon they arrived at the airport and loaded their luggage onto the airplane. As they stood there outside of the airplane, Izuku told his uncle to let him know if he is ever in America for any reason so they could meet. I will let you know, Aizawa stated and hugged Izuku goodbye. Oh, here you go. Izuku said as he threw the keys to Aizawa, who looked confused. It's yours from now on. It would cost more than the car is worth to transport it from Japan to America and convert it to the American driving system. As such, enjoy the new car that is less than a year old. Izuku said with a smirk and Aizawa thanked him and asked if it was in his name already and Izuku nodded his head. Soon the three of them got on the airplane and it started to taxi to the runway. This was the end of the Shadow Hero, Hunter in Japan and the journey of the Midoriya family into America. Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend. Let us head fanfics. Back with amazing fanfiction.
Okay, sadly the chapter is over. And if you enjoyed the video, just leave a like and subscribe with post notification. So when the next chapter is ready, you will be notified. Okay, see you in the next video. Bye.